A single mother was thrown out by her own father on Easter Sunday with nowhere to go. What happened next when a mysterious millionaire stopped his car changed everything she believed about love and second chances. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now subscribe to the channel and let's get started. The wind that Easter morning carried the scent of fresh blooms, sunlight painting the neighborhood in soft gold. But for Angela, who clutched a tattered duffel bag in one hand and her sleepy daughter in the other, the day felt like the end of the world. She stood on the porch of her childhood home. Until mere minutes ago, it had been her only safe haven. Now, a slammed door and her father's thunderous voice still echoed behind that door. "Get out!" he had roared, eyes ablaze, "and never come back!" Angela's father, the stern patriarch of a devout household, had decided that raising a child out of wedlock brought shame upon the family, especially on such a holy day. For years, Angela's mother had been the buffer between father and daughter, a quiet protector who tried to keep the peace. But now her mother was gone, lost to an illness that had claimed her months ago. Without that gentle presence to soften his rigid heart, her father's patience had finally snapped. Tears burned Angela's eyes, but she willed herself not to cry. She refused to break down in front of her daughter, Lucy, who was only 5 but already sensed the weight of grown-up sorrows. "It's okay, sweetie," Angela whispered, forcing a trembling smile. "We'll figure this out." Easter Sunday in their little town was a day of celebration. Cheerful crowds heading to sunrise service, families sitting around bright pastel tables for brunch. Yet here, Angela stood on the curb, her single suitcase precariously balanced, while Lucy fiddled with the ribbon of her worn-out stuffed bunny. In the distance, church bells tolled, marking the start of services Angela and Lucy would no longer be attending. She felt the full force of her father's rejection like a physical blow. Yes, things had been tense for years. The unplanned pregnancy that wrecked her father's small-town illusions of perfection. The arguments about tradition and family honor. The dreadful silence that had replaced the once loving environment. But never in her darkest dreams did she imagine he would cast her out on a holiday dedicated to rebirth and renewal. With no place to go, Angela rummaged through her purse in search of bus fare. She had maybe $40 to her name, enough for a couple nights in the cheapest motel on the outskirts or a single bus ticket to the next county. Even that was uncertain. She'd have to keep some money aside for food or medication if Lucy fell ill. Lucy's eyes were on her, wide and trusting. Angela gently stroked Lucy's hair, trying to project courage. "We'll just figure this out, one step at a time." A shaky whisper was the best she could manage. A few neighbors peeked from behind their curtains, curiosity etched on their faces. Nobody came out to offer help, perhaps out of fear of the father's reputation, or perhaps they merely preferred not to get involved. After all, this was a day for festivities, not the messy drama of a single mother and her small child. Cars drove by, a few slowing when they spotted Angela on the curb with her bag and child. Some drivers craned their necks as though they wanted to ask if she needed assistance, but the unspoken rule of this small conservative town held them back. Nobody wanted to cross lines or defy Angela's father, a man both respected and feared. Lucy began to whimper. The child was hungry, and her little legs trembled from standing so long. Angela lifted her, letting Lucy's head rest against her shoulder. Lucy's bunny flopped at her side, the final remnant of any childlike normalcy they had. In that moment, Angela vowed she would do whatever it took to protect her daughter from a future of rejection and bitterness. Still, the question burned. Where do we go now? She stared at the bus schedule on her phone, but nothing made sense. She didn't have the resources to start a new life far away. Any friend who might have helped was either out of town for Easter weekend or unwilling to defy her father's wrath. Time passed in excruciating slowness. The sun climbed higher, its gentle warmth turning into a glare. Lucy dozed in Angela's arms, and Angela's free hand shook from stress and fatigue. Just when she thought she might crumble under despair, a sleek, unfamiliar car slowed at the curb. It was a luxury sedan with tinted windows, one she had never seen on their simple block. The driver's window rolled down, revealing a man in a crisp suit who had a blend of concern and confusion on his face. He was perhaps in his early 40s, with kind eyes that seemed out of place in this grim context. Angela stiffened, unsure whether to trust any stranger, much less one with such an expensive vehicle. "Are you in need of help?" he asked, voice gentle yet firm. Angela swallowed, not knowing how to respond. Pride and humiliation battled within her. She managed a nod, tears threatening to betray her calm facade. "Our bus. We don't have anywhere to go," she finally admitted. The man's gaze flicked to Lucy. Something in his expression changed. Maybe empathy, maybe a memory he didn't share. "Get in," he said quietly. "I'll take you somewhere safe." 1,000 questions collided in Angela's mind. Who is he? Why is he doing this? Could he be dangerous? But as Lucy stirred awake, Angela felt desperation overruling caution. The entire morning had been an exercise in heartbreak. She had to make a split-second decision, to step into the unknown or remain stranded on a sidewalk that offered no salvation. Heart pounding, Angela climbed into the passenger seat, gently easing Lucy onto her lap. The car's interior smelled of leather and pine air freshener, so foreign to her budget life reality. She watched the man carefully as he pulled away from the curb, catching glimpses of his sharp suit, an expensive watch glinting at his wrist. "Thank you," she managed to say, feeling inadequate. Those words seemed too small to convey her gratitude. He glanced her way, a slight nod. "My name's Spencer," he offered like it was an afterthought. "And I'm sorry if this seems sudden. I just couldn't leave you there." Angela introduced herself softly, then Lucy, who looked up at him with frightened eyes. Spencer tried a brief smile, but caution remained in his gaze. As the car navigated quiet streets, church bells rang once more in the distance, reminding Angela again what day it was. Easter Sunday, a time of renewal and hope. But for Angela, it was the darkest day she'd ever lived. Unbeknownst to her, it was also the beginning of something greater than she could imagine, a turn of events that would challenge everything she believed about love, family, and second chances. Outside, pastel-clad families gathered for celebrations. Kids chased each other in front yards, and church services concluded with joyous hymns. Inside that quiet sedan, a single mother and her child traveled toward an uncertain destiny under the protection of a stranger with mysterious motives. She had no idea what Spencer wanted or who he truly was. She only knew that when she was at her absolute lowest, he had shown up. And for reasons she couldn't fathom, he had chosen to help. As she cradled Lucy and felt the hum of the engine under her seat, Angela felt the faintest flicker of hope. Perhaps, on this day of all days, an ending could transform into a brand new beginning. Angela sank into the passenger seat, gently shifting Lucy so the little girl could see the passing scenery through the window. The April sun cast dancing shadows on Lucy's tiny face, and every so often she'd flinch at the roar of a car speeding alongside them. Despite the plush leather and the hum of the air conditioning, tension clung to Angela's chest as questions brewed. She turned slightly to look at Spencer, this man who had come out of nowhere. His features were refined, sharp cheekbones, a slight hint of stubble, eyes that seemed used to a heavier gaze than everyday folk. Every movement, from how he adjusted the temperature controls to the way he signaled at intersections, radiated a polished, deliberate air. He must be someone important, Angela thought. Perhaps a visiting businessman who'd taken the wrong exit, or a wealthy traveler merely passing through their small town. Lucy, for her part, peeked over Angela's arm to stare at Spencer. In her other hand, she clutched the stuffed bunny, its worn ears pressed protectively against her face. "Mommy?" she whispered. Where are we going?" Angela's stomach twisted. She had no answer. It was a question she herself wanted to throw at Spencer. Instead, she mustered a gentle tone. "We're just going to find someplace to talk, sweetie. Everything will be fine." Spencer's gaze flicked in the rearview mirror. He seemed to register Lucy's concern and Angela's silent fear. "There's a diner on the outskirts of town," he offered. "I figure we can stop, get something to eat, and discuss what you need." The words, "what you need," echoed strangely in Angela's mind. She couldn't remember the last time someone, besides her late mother, had spoken those words so genuinely. Her father had been more about demands than supportive care, especially after Lucy was born. Despite her uncertainty, Angela felt her hunger stir at the mention of food. She'd left the house that morning with nothing more than the remnants of Lucy's cereal in a plastic cup. Lucy's stomach gurgled softly, and Angela nodded in quiet acceptance. Yes, we could all use something to eat. They pulled into the diner's gravel lot a few minutes later. The sign, worn and half-lit, read, "Harlow's Country Diner." A few dusty pickup trucks and older sedans dotted the lot. Locals who'd decided to grab breakfast after sunrise service, most likely. Spencer parked his sleek black sedan near the entrance. When Angela slid out, Lucy clinging to her side, she noticed the stares from two older men on the diner porch. The men exchanged looks, probably at the sight of a fancy car in front of such a humble establishment. Or maybe they recognized Angela from around town, especially if word had spread about her father's dramatic outburst. The diner's interior carried the aroma of bacon, grease, and burnt coffee. Vinyl booths lined the walls, each with silver napkin dispensers and chipped salt shakers. A waitress, a woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense ponytail, paused her cleaning as they entered. Her gaze flicked to Angela and Lucy, then shifted to Spencer's suit. Angela braced herself for the usual small-town curiosity or pity, but the waitress merely offered them a polite nod. They chose a corner booth by the window. Spencer sat across from Angela and Lucy so he could see the parking lot and keep an eye on his car. The vinyl squeaked under them. Outside, the day was bright, but Angela still felt a layer of gloom hovering within her. Lucy's gaze roamed over the laminated menu, though she was too young to read the words. "Do they have pancakes?" she asked, looking up hopefully. Spencer offered the child a small smile. "I'm sure they do," he said softly, then slid the menu closer to Lucy. "Here, see? Pancakes with strawberries?" Angela watched Lucy's delight and felt a pang. Food was so simple, yet it felt luxurious right now. Strawberries, she thought, recalling how rarely she could afford fresh fruit. The waitress came over, pen poised above her notepad. Without glancing at Angela, she directed her question at Spencer first. "What can I get you folks?" Spencer's eyes darted to Angela, a silent invitation. She hesitated, feeling self-conscious about cost. "I'll just have coffee," Angela mumbled. "And maybe toast." She knew toast would be cheap. She couldn't let Spencer pay for anything too extravagant, no matter that he'd rescued them from the curb. But Spencer lightly shook his head. "Actually, let's do 2 pancake plates with whatever sides are typical. Bacon, eggs. Also an orange juice for the little one. And for you?" He turned to Angela, quietly ignoring her attempt to keep it cheap. She swallowed. "Scrambled eggs, maybe," she whispered, cheeks warming. He nodded at the waitress. "Scrambled eggs, bacon, and anything else that's part of a breakfast platter. And coffee for both of us." The waitress, scribbling quickly, didn't miss the tension. "All right, folks, I'll get that started for you," she said, stepping away. A moment of silence fell over the booth. Angela busied herself tucking Lucy's hair behind her ears while Lucy examined a crayon left behind by a previous child occupant. Spencer leaned in slightly, his voice low. "I realize this might be overwhelming," he said, "but you and your daughter looked like you really needed help back there." Angela nodded. "We did," she answered, her voice subdued. "Thank you. That was My father's house. He, threw me out." A flicker of something passed over Spencer's face, a mixture of compassion and curiosity. "On Easter? That's unusual." She let out a shaking breath. "He doesn't approve of— Well, I had Lucy out of wedlock. My mother passed a few months ago, and now he's alone in that house, angry at the world. I guess he finally had enough of me." Lucy, hearing her name, snuggled closer to Angela, her stuffed bunny half forgotten. "Mommy," she murmured, "don't be sad." Angela forced a smile, wiping away a tear she didn't realize had escaped. "I'm not, darling. I promise." Spencer observed Lucy's reassurance with a subdued expression, then exhaled slowly. "I'm sorry," he said, the words seeming to hold weight. "No one should be cast out for having a child, especially not on a day like this." Angela studied his face. "I don't want to overstep, but why stop for us? I mean, I'm grateful, so grateful, but it's still odd that you do this for strangers." He paused as the waitress brought 2 steaming mugs of coffee. The interruption gave him time to compose whatever he wanted to say. The moment the waitress left again, Spencer spoke quietly. "Sometimes you see someone in need and it hits you hard. You can't just drive by." There was a haunted undertone in his voice. Angela decided not to press further, though countless questions still knocked inside her head. Instead, she tested a sip of the coffee, wincing at the bitterness. She added sugar, far more than she usually did, hoping it'd calm her nerves. Soon the food arrived, set out in a flurry of plates by the waitress. Lucy's eyes lit up at the sight of fluffy pancakes crowned with strawberries. Angela gently cut them into small pieces and watched Lucy devour them with childlike glee. Meanwhile, Angela took careful bites of her eggs, acutely aware that Spencer was paying for this meal. Between mouthfuls, Spencer finally ventured, "What's your plan now? Do you have any relatives or maybe a friend you can stay with?" Angela's posture sagged. "Not really. My father was my last family in this town. My mother's relatives are all scattered, and I never knew them that well. Most people here are either his friends or they're afraid of him. He's not exactly the forgiving type." She dropped her gaze to her plate. "I have a little money, enough for maybe 2 nights in a cheap motel. But after that, I don't know." Spencer set down his fork, seeming to weigh his words. "I'm going to be completely honest. I'm here on business, just passing through, but I do own a property in the next county, about an hour from here, a kind of estate. It's old and I'm planning some renovations, but nobody's living there right now." Angela froze. The meaning behind his words was too massive to comprehend in a single breath. "Are you suggesting—" He cleared his throat. "You and Lucy, maybe you need a place, even if it's temporary. It's not exactly homey yet, but it's big, has multiple rooms, and it's private. I keep some staff around for upkeep, but you'd be free to stay as long as you need." Her head spun. "Stay on a stranger's estate?" That sounded like some odd fairy tale scenario. She worried about Lucy's safety, her own vulnerability. What if Spencer's intentions were not as kind as they seemed? She'd heard cautionary tales about wealthy men who used generosity to manipulate desperate women. Yet she glanced at Lucy, who was too busy giggling over strawberry syrup to sense her mother's turmoil. Angela inhaled, trying to steady her swirling thoughts. I don't want to impose or—" Spencer raised a hand gently. "I promise it's not charity. Think of it as a safe place while you figure out the next step. You can come and go as you please. You can lock your door. I'll even provide a separate set of locks if it makes you feel safer." Her heart hammered. The idea of not spending her last dollars on a rundown motel, of giving Lucy a stable roof, albeit temporary, was almost too good to refuse. But the leap of faith required was monumental. She locked eyes with him. "I need to ensure Lucy's safety. I need to know you're not—" She hesitated, embarrassment coloring her cheeks. "A threat?" he finished gently. "That's fair. Angela lowered her voice. "I have to protect my daughter. I appreciate everything you've done, but I don't actually know you." She expected some mild offense, but Spencer only gave a solemn nod. "You're right. If our positions were reversed, I'd feel the same. How can I prove I'm just trying to help?" She thought for a moment, fingertips grazing Lucy's hair. "Tell me why," she finally said. "Why are you doing this? Why do you care so much?" The question hung in the air. Spencer's gaze drifted to the window where sunlight fell on the hood of his car. When he looked back at Angela, his eyes seemed veiled by memory. "Let's just say, I knew someone once, in a situation a bit like yours. She was left alone, forced out, no resources. I couldn't help her then. I don't want to see it happen again." Emotion flickered across his face. Regret, sorrow, guilt, maybe. Angela decided not to pry further, sensing that story was buried in something deeply personal. Instead, she gave him the slightest nod. "All right," she whispered. Lucy reached for her mother's hand. "Mommy, can we stay with him? The house he talked about?" Spencer's lips curved in a gentle, almost sad smile. "It's an estate, but it'll need some tidying. You might have to put up with dust and boxes, but we'll make sure you have a proper bedroom, Lucy." The child grinned. Angela felt tears sting her eyes again. She'd grown used to people judging her, scorning her, ignoring her plight. Now here was a man she barely knew, offering more kindness than her own father had ever shown. It was overwhelming. Angela breathed in and out, trying to quell her trembling. "If it's truly not a bother," she said slowly, I'll accept, just until I can find a job and save up for a place. I won't be a freeloader." Spencer's expression softened. "Stay as long as you need, and we can talk about you finding work. Maybe I can help with that too. But one step at a time. Let's get you safe first." The waitress returned to clear plates, and Spencer discreetly paid the bill in cash, leaving a generous tip. Angela mouthed a quick, "Thank you," feeling another rush of gratitude that mingled with her apprehension about what lay ahead. Outside, the sun was warmer, the day fully in swing. The older men on the porch cast curious glances as Angela, Lucy, and Spencer walked back to the sedan. Angela realized with a pang that if word got back to her father, he'd probably spread vicious rumors. But she couldn't let that stop her. She had Lucy to think about, and their future was more important than small-town gossip. They settled in the car again, Lucy giggling about the yummy pancakes. As Spencer navigated them out of the lot, Angela glanced in the side mirror. "I'm leaving everything I've ever known." Just like that. A sense of both dread and hope washed over her. "Thank you," she repeated softly, voice trembling with sincerity. I can't say it enough." "Thank you," Spencer acknowledged her with a brief nod, eyes on the road. "Let's just see this through," he murmured. "You focus on Lucy and what matters most, having a stable environment. The rest, we'll handle as it comes." They drove on, leaving the diner behind, weaving through the simple streets of the only hometown Angela had ever had. Lucy pressed her face to the window, enthralled by the passing houses. With each mile, Angela felt the invisible tether to her father's house loosen, replaced by an uncertain but undeniable sense of promise. In the center console, Spencer's phone buzzed. He ignored it, seemingly intent on the drive. Angela wondered if it was business, the reason he'd come to this small town in the first place. She also wondered how vast his life must be, how far-reaching. She and Lucy were stepping into a universe so foreign to them, the realm of a man who wore $1,000 suits and owned vacant estates. Yet beneath that polished exterior, she sensed heartbreak, or at least a heavy memory. They were both carrying burdens that words alone might not easily unravel. As Lucy yawned, lulled by the car's gentle motion, Angela brushed her daughter's hair aside and whispered a silent vow. "I will protect you, my love. Whatever it takes, I'll protect you." Outside, the farmland began to open up, Wide, rolling fields and trees bursting with spring blossoms. The scenery seemed to signal the fresh start Angela so desperately needed. She dared not exhale in relief just yet. Too many unknowns lay ahead. But as the car advanced toward the next county, Angela felt something in her chest lighten, as though perhaps, by some Easter miracle, her life was not ending after all. It was, in fact, beginning anew in the unlikeliest of ways. They traveled for almost an hour, passing through stretches of farmland and quiet roads that wound past clusters of trees. Lucy dozed in the back seat now, curled up against the cushions as if it were the safest place on earth. Every so often, Angela would glance over her shoulder to confirm the gentle rise and fall of her little girl's breathing. Outside, the scenery was all pastel skies and lush greenery, a world reborn in spring. Yet Angela's chest fluttered with every new mile, an equal measure of anticipation and unease. Spencer seemed focused on the drive, shoulders tense beneath his well-tailored jacket. Occasionally, he'd make brief, passing comments about the landscape. "There's a historic barn about 2 miles from here," he mentioned at one point. Or, "These fields used to be owned by a big dairy co-op." Angela noticed that he carried a world of knowledge about things that hardly anyone in her small town would know or care about. But she responded politely, nodding or offering a soft "oh" to invite him to continue. The truth was, her mind throbbed with too many questions about his life, about the estate, about what came next for Lucy and her. Soon, the car turned off the main highway onto a narrow lane. Though paved, it was flanked by tall pines that created a tunnel of dappled shadows, the sun flickering through the canopy overhead. Lucy stirred awake. She sat up, pressing her small hands to the window, mesmerized by the trees that seemed to part in welcome. Angela tried to steady her voice. "This is near your estate?" "Just a bit farther," Spencer confirmed, slowing as the road curved. The quiet hush of the place pressed in, broken only by birdsong and the low hum of the sedan's engine. The typical hustle of everyday life, traffic, strip malls, the chatter of neighbors, felt distant, like a memory from another world. They arrived at a tall wrought-iron gate that stood between 2 old stone pillars. Over the years, moss and climbing vines had woven themselves into the ironwork, giving it a slightly overgrown look. A sophisticated keypad jutted from one pillar, incongruous against the estate's seemingly antique facade. Spencer rolled down his window, tapped in a code. The gate groaned, then swung open with stately slowness, revealing a gravel driveway that wound ahead through more towering pines and oaks. Lucy's excitement was immediate. "Wow!" she whispered, nose practically pressed to the window. Angela's heart fluttered again, uncertain if she was stepping into a safe haven or drifting into someone else's lonely kingdom. Whatever it was far more than she or Lucy had ever known. After another few bends, the house emerged from behind the trees, a grand Victorian-style mansion with turrets and ornate gables, its brick walls covered in creeping ivy. In the midday light, the structure looked formidable yet oddly inviting, like something from an old romantic novel. The wide porch out front was framed by Corinthian columns. Angela swallowed hard, instinctively hugging her arms around her torso. Spencer parked near a circular fountain in the driveway. The fountain itself was dry, no water flowing, just a stone centerpiece ringed by chipped statues of cherubs. Weeds sprouted in the cracks around it, hinting that the estate's upkeep wasn't fully polished. As they climbed out, the crunch of gravel underfoot was loud in the stillness. Lucy clutched Angela's hand, her eyes darting over the mansion's tall windows. Even from the outside, Angela could see some curtains drawn back, ghost-like in the gloom of the interior. "It's old," Spencer said quietly, stepping around the car. "I'll admit I haven't done much with it yet. Most of the staff only come by to do basic cleaning, some landscaping, and maintenance checks. Otherwise, it remains empty." He caught himself, lips curving into a wry half-smile. "Well, not anymore." Angela found herself at a loss for words. The place was massive, far beyond any dream she'd had of a temporary shelter. She could practically feel the echo of footsteps that once roamed these halls in decades past. "Lucy," she murmured, leaning down, "stay close to me, okay?" Lucy nodded eagerly, though her attention was glued to a pair of stone lion statues flanking the entryway steps. Spencer led them up onto the porch, retrieving a key ring from his pocket. The heavy wooden doors creaked with a slow majesty as he unlocked them, and a draft of cool, musty air rushed out to greet them. The foyer inside was cavernous. Marble floors, faded yet still impressive, extended toward a sweeping staircase. A chandelier overhead remained unlit, and dust motes drifted in the sunbeams that slanted through tall windows. To their left, a large parlor revealed plush but sheet-covered furniture, giving the impression that the house slept beneath layers of cloth. To their right, a corridor led into shadowy rooms, presumably a study or dining area. Angela could almost taste the air of disuse. "It's incredible," she managed, voice hushed. She felt a pang of self-consciousness. Her entire life she'd struggled in cramped apartments or the modest home of her father. Now this place felt like stepping into another reality altogether. Lucy let out a small squeak of excitement, though she kept clutching Angela's hand. "Where's our room, Mommy?" Spencer offered a reassuring smile. "Upstairs, near the back, there's a set of guest rooms that get the best morning light. They're furnished, just not modern. But I can bring in anything you need. Let's head up." He gestured for Angela and Lucy to follow him up the grand staircase, their footsteps echoing on the polished steps. The corridor above branched left and right, lined with multiple doors. Spencer picked a door on the left, then led them into a spacious bedroom suite. Large windows draped in dusty curtains overlooked the front gardens. A four-poster bed with a floral comforter stood in the center, flanked by two antique nightstands. Across the room, a smaller adjoining door presumably led to another bedroom or a sitting room. Angela walked in, heart hammering. Even in its obvious need of freshening, the space was breathtaking, like a relic from a bygone era. Lucy tiptoed across the wooden floor and peered out the window, transfixed by the view of ancient oaks. Spencer moved to open the closet, revealing empty hangers and an old trunk inside. "I had some of the older clothes and blankets removed," he explained, brushing off a bit of dust. "But if you need anything, clothes, toiletries, children's items, just let me know." Angela set her meager suitcase on the bed. It looked out of place in such a regal room, like a chip of drifting wood in a grand cathedral. She turned, noticing Spencer had taken a couple of steps away, as if giving her space to absorb everything. Lucy hopped excitedly on the edge of the bed, squealing at the way it bounced softly. "Thank you," Angela repeated, her throat tight. "This is far more than I ever expected." A flicker of relief, maybe even gratitude, crossed Spencer's face. "I'm just glad it's useful to someone. Houses like this, they aren't meant to be empty. They need life, laughter, warmth. It's been dormant for too long." Angela sensed a deeper meaning behind his words. Before she could ask more, Lucy exclaimed, "Mommy, the bed is so big!" She jumped again, then clutched the stuffed bunny to her chest, smiling at Spencer. "Thank you, Mr. Spencer." He nodded with a gentle quirk of his lips. "You're welcome, Lucy. It's nice to have someone actually enjoy the place." A flutter of silent relief spread through Angela's chest. If Lucy was comfortable here, that eased at least one of her fears. She glanced around. "So there's electricity, I assume?" "Running water?" Spencer chuckled softly, tapping the wall switch. The overhead fixture sputtered to life, casting warm light across the room. "It may be old, but it's connected. Water's fine, though you'll want to run the faucets a bit. There's a caretaker who usually visits once a week to keep an eye on things. I'll let him know you're here so he can ensure everything's functioning." Angela inhaled slowly, remembering each detail so she could handle the practicalities on her own. "What about food?" she ventured. "There's a small kitchen staff that used to come on weekends, mostly to inventory or check that things weren't spoiling. But given the emptiness, I scaled that back. Let me call someone, a cook or a housekeeper, someone who can stock the pantry and fridge, or if you prefer, I can just give you some money so you can shop for yourselves. Whatever makes you more comfortable." He said it so casually, as though solving these problems was second nature to him. Meanwhile, Angela felt the strain of her entire adult life pressed into her next breath. Accepting more of his help felt embarrassing, but she also recognized the precariousness of her situation. Maybe just a bit of groceries for now. I can cook. I'm used to that." Spencer's face lit with an expression that might have been relief. "Of course. I'll arrange a trip to the store or have items delivered if that's easier." Lucy hopped off the bed, curiosity tugging her toward the other door in the room. She opened it, gasping at the sight of a smaller adjoining space which contained a comfy armchair by a tall bay window. Dust motes glowed in a shaft of sun. "Mommy, can I read books here?" Lucy asked, eyes shining. Angela's tension loosened a bit. "Yes, honey. We'll make it your reading nook." Spencer quietly stepped back into the hallway, giving mother and child a moment alone in their new surroundings. Angela followed, softly closing the door behind her so Lucy could explore. In the corridor, the hush felt amplified. She finally turned to Spencer. "I don't know how to thank you properly," she whispered. "I promise, as soon as I can, I'll figure out how to pay you back for all this." He lifted a hand in a calming gesture. "Don't rush into that. I told you this place was vacant. Having someone living here might do it some good. And I like helping." A hesitant pause, as if he weighed sharing more. In the end, he simply said, "If you feel compelled to show gratitude, just promise to keep the place cared for. Let Lucy be happy and safe here." Tears pricked at Angela's eyes. It was a foreign feeling to have a total stranger understand her fears so clearly and to treat them with such kindness. She nodded, forced a watery smile. "I will, I promise. Also," he continued, voice dipping, "I'll leave you my number. I have some business to wrap up, but I'll check in daily. If you need anything, repairs, supplies, even just a sense of security, call me. I'm not too far." He gave a tentative shrug. Maybe an hour's drive, depending on traffic. She exhaled in relief. It was reassuring to know he'd be reachable, that they wouldn't just be abandoned here. Still, a flicker of longing for independence stirred in her chest. You've done so much already." She swallowed. "Can I at least cook you dinner sometime? When you come by?" He paused, as though the suggestion touched him. "I'd like that," he murmured. "Yes, that would be nice." They exchanged a small mutual smile. Then Spencer gestured down the hall. "There's a second guest room if you'd prefer separate sleeping arrangements for Lucy or if someone else visits you. And that door at the end leads to a balcony overlooking the gardens. The caretaker, Ben, will probably show you around if you want a tour of the property. He's been with the estate for years." Angela nodded again, absorbing the flood of details. "I think Lucy and I will just settle in first, then maybe a tour. It's all a bit overwhelming." "Take your time," Spencer said kindly. "I'll give you some space. Let me just make a few phone calls, arrange for groceries, and then I'll be off. You can rest. You've had a difficult morning." She offered a quiet, "Thank you," and he turned toward the stairs, footsteps echoing softly against the polished wood. Once he disappeared, Angela slipped back into the bedroom. Lucy was perched on the armchair in that smaller nook, hugging her bunny, as if testing how it felt to belong there. Angela joined her, sinking onto the armrest to gather Lucy in her arms. The child peered up with bright, trusting eyes. "Are we staying here forever, Mommy?" A pang darted through Angela's chest. "Not forever, baby, but for a while until we can find a better plan." She forced a light-hearted tone. "Is that okay with you?" Lucy grinned, nodding vigorously. "It's so pretty here. And you're not sad anymore." Angela pressed a kiss to Lucy's temple, a lump forming in her throat. She was grateful Lucy saw her sadness lifting. It was a small sign that hope was possible. Yet Angela knew they were still at the start of a winding road. Accepting Spencer's generosity wasn't the end of their worries. Her father's rejection still loomed in her mind, and the practicalities of building a new life couldn't be ignored. But for now, Lucy's excitement was enough to push fear aside. They sat like that for a few moments, mother and daughter soaking in the quiet hush of the estate. In the background, Angela could faintly hear Spencer's voice from down the hall, speaking on his phone, likely arranging the next wave of help they so desperately needed. A breeze rustled the curtains, stirring a bit of dust in the sunbeams that fell across the floor. Somewhere in the distance, the faint caw of a crow punctuated the stillness. Angela breathed it all in, letting the tension in her shoulders loosen, just a fraction. She was still wary, still uncertain. But for the first time in a long while, she felt something she hadn't dared to feel in ages. A glimmer of genuine relief. Maybe Easter had brought more than heartbreak this year. Maybe it had brought them the second chance she never expected. Late afternoon light angled through the tall windows of the bedroom, illuminating particles of dust as they spiraled in the air. Lucy, sprawled across the four-poster bed, had dozed off again, her small body nestled beneath a faded quilt Angela found at the foot of the mattress. It amazed Angela how quickly children could adapt to new surroundings if they felt safe. Despite the strangeness of this grand estate, Lucy showed no fear, only excitement. Angela stood by the window, one hand resting on the sill. Through the glass, she observed the vast front lawn where Spencer's car was still parked near the silent fountain. On the opposite side, the beginnings of a wild garden stretched out, rows of overgrown shrubs and flower beds that must have once been carefully manicured. In the distance, she caught sight of a figure moving along a hedge. A man in work clothes, likely the caretaker Spencer had mentioned. She heard footsteps in the corridor, and then a soft knock on the doorframe. It was Spencer, his tie loosened as though he'd been making phone calls for an hour straight. He stepped inside, keeping his voice low so as not to wake Lucy. "I just got off the phone with a local grocery service," he said. "They'll deliver basic supplies, milk, bread, fruit, cereal for Lucy by early evening. For now, I found bottled water in the kitchen pantry plus some canned soup and crackers." Angela offered a thankful nod. "That's wonderful," she murmured, relieved that they wouldn't face an empty kitchen. Her eyes flicked to Lucy, who turned over in her slumber, pressing the stuffed bunny to her cheek. Spencer followed her gaze. "She seems comfortable." A trace of a smile crossed his features before his tone turned apologetic. "I'm sorry if this all feels abrupt. Believe me, I'm not trying to drop a mountain of change on you all at once. But time is something we can't always control." Angela stepped away from the window, hugging her arms loosely around herself. "After everything that happened with my father, anything would feel abrupt," she said quietly. "But you're right. Time doesn't wait for us to catch up. And you've been unbelievably kind." He inclined his head, then cleared his throat. "I'll be heading out soon. I have a few matters in town to address. Business deals, meetings, that sort of thing." A pause, as though choosing his words carefully. "I wanted to ask if you feel safe here. Truly safe. If not, I can arrange a hotel, something smaller." Angela paused, letting the question settle. The idea of a hotel, anonymous, cramped, versus this estate's space and quiet. Even with the musty hallways and imposing architecture, she sensed a strange sort of calm here. Maybe it was Lucy's enthusiasm, maybe the hush of the surrounding woods. "I do feel safe," she answered honestly. "It's big and a bit ghostly, but not in a bad way. It's peaceful. Spencer's shoulders relaxed slightly. Good. Then I'll leave you to rest. The caretaker, Ben is his name. He usually drops by around this time. Don't be alarmed if he knocks on the door. He's friendly, bit rough around the edges, but loyal. If you need help with anything, fuses, odd corners of the house, Ben's your man. Angela nodded, determined to remember everything. I'll keep that in mind. They fell into a moment of mutual silence, the hush of the old mansion filling the space. Downstairs, somewhere near the foyer, a door creaked, likely the caretaker entering. Spencer straightened, then extended a small slip of paper to Angela. On it was his phone number, scribbled in neat handwriting. Call me anytime. If I don't pick up right away, leave a message. I promise I'll respond as soon as I can. She accepted the paper, folding it carefully as though it were a precious item. Thank you, she whispered, the sincerity in her voice obvious. He flashed a last faint smile before stepping out. Angela followed him to the hallway, quietly trailing behind as he descended the stairs. When they reached the foyer, sunlight slanted through the high windows, illuminating the dust motes that danced in the air. The caretaker, a stout man with sun-weathered skin, stood there, doffing his cap awkwardly when he spotted them. Ben, Spencer greeted. This is Angela. She'll be staying in the upstairs guest suite with her daughter. Treat her like family. Anything she needs, help her out. Ben nodded, eyeing Angela with curiosity but no overt judgment. Sure thing, sir. I'll do my rounds inside, see everything's in order. Miss, he added politely to Angela. Angela offered a small smile, trying to quell the nerves that threatened to bubble over. Thank you, Ben, and nice to meet you. Spencer then opened the front door, pausing on the threshold to check something on his phone. The sunlight streamed in, illuminating the marble floor. He glanced back one final time. Lock the door behind me if you want. The gate's secured too, but do whatever makes you comfortable. I will, Angela replied. She walked him to the porch where the stale outside air mingled with the scent of budding flowers. They exchanged a brief nod, an unspoken promise that this arrangement, however odd, would be treated with respect. Angela watched Spencer climb into his sleek sedan. The engine purred, and he navigated the driveway's curve, disappearing behind a row of tall hedges. Standing there on the porch, she realized she was now effectively alone in this vast estate, with only Lucy, a caretaker, and the silent aura of the mansion itself for company. Slowly, she stepped back inside and closed the heavy double doors. She turned the deadbolt, hearing the solid click. A rush of quiet enveloped her, and for an instant, she felt an almost overwhelming sense of solitude. Then came the gentle shuffle of Ben's boots across the marble as he made his way through the rooms. She found him in the grand parlor, pulling dust covers off a couple of chairs. "Don't mean to be forward, miss," he said, "but you want me to tidy up in here? Might be nice if you and your little one have a place to sit besides the bedroom." Angela took in the room, plush Victorian sofas, a fireplace with an elaborate mantel, a few antique side tables. Everything was coated in a fine layer of dust. "That would be great," she answered, feeling a renewed wave of gratitude. "I'm Angela, by the way. Lucy is my daughter. She's resting upstairs." Ben nodded, flapping the dust cover to shake out the worst of the grime. "Spencer's a good man," he remarked, as though sensing Angela's unasked questions. "He's not here often, but when he is, he's respectful of this old place, and of people." He paused. "I've been caretaker for years now, since before he bought it. He insisted on keeping me on board." Angela tilted her head, curiosity piqued. "So the estate belonged to someone else before Spencer?" Ben gave a short laugh. "Belonged to plenty of folks. The place is older than it looks. Last owners were a couple from out east, but they never did anything with it. Let it languish. Spencer purchased it at an auction, put money in to update the wiring and plumbing, but, well, never fully moved in." Angela picked up a stray cushion that had fallen to the floor, brushing it off. "He told me it sits empty most of the time." Ben grunted in agreement. I do what I can to keep it from falling into ruin. If you need repairs, you let me know. I'm here every couple days. Got a small cottage out back. Live there part-time. His gaze softened slightly. It's good to have some life in here again. Been too quiet. Something about that statement made Angela smile sadly. I know the feeling of quiet, especially the kind that comes after someone leaves. Her father's furious face flashed across her mind, but she shoved that memory down and forced a polite nod toward Ben. Thank you for helping. Lucy and I appreciate it more than you know. Ben nodded, a tacit understanding passing between them. He resumed tugging covers off the furniture, stirring up motes of dust that caught the late afternoon light. Angela left him to his work and wandered into the adjoining room, a formal dining hall with a massive chandelier overhead. The table, long enough to seat a dozen or more guests, was draped in yellowed linen, the chairs stacked in a corner. A slight musty odor clung to the air, though large windows along one wall allowed streams of sunlight. She tried to picture a lavish dinner party here, women in elegant dresses, men in suits, laughter echoing through the hall. Now it was just empty space and fading grandeur. A pang of sadness mingled with her fascination. She'd never known such luxury, but she also understood that grand houses often held secrets, loneliness, old regrets. Angela turned, hearing Lucy's voice drifting from the foyer. The child's footsteps padded across the marble. "Mommy?" "Over here," Angela called softly. She emerged from the dining room, meeting Lucy in the foyer. Her daughter rubbed her eyes, still waking from her nap. Lucy frowned. "I thought you left." There was a tremor in her voice, as though worried her mother might disappear the way her grandfather had that morning. Angela scooped Lucy into her arms, pressing a kiss to her temple. "No, sweetheart, I'm here. I was just exploring." Lucy brightened a bit, curling her arms around Angela's neck. "Are we going to stay here a long time?" she asked again, clearly enthralled by the mansion. Angela gently brushed hair away from Lucy's eyes. "We'll stay until we can make a better plan. But for now, yes, we're here." She forced a smile. "Think of it like an adventure. A big old house waiting for us to uncover its secrets." Lucy giggled at the word secrets. Then she noticed Ben in the parlor and squirmed in Angela's arms, eager to investigate. Angela let her down, watching as Lucy carefully tiptoed over, curiosity shining in her gaze. "Who are you?" Lucy asked, looking up at Ben, who now stood wiping dust from a side table. He knelt down a bit, voice gentle. "Name's Ben, Missy. I help take care of this place. And who might you be?" "Lucy," she replied, hugging her bunny tight to her chest. "You live here too?" Ben chuckled. "Sorta do, in my own little cottage, but maybe I'll see you and your mom around. Would you like to see the back garden sometime? There are flowers, wild ones but still pretty." Lucy's eyes widened. "Yes. Can I, Mommy?" Angela, standing in the archway, nodded. "Of course. Maybe tomorrow or the next day after we've settled." With that promise, Lucy darted back to Angela, tugging at her skirt as if to say, "Let's see more now." But Angela coaxed her gently. "We'll have plenty of time, darling. Let's wait until everything's less dusty." Ben laughed, giving Lucy a friendly wink before turning back to his work. Feeling lighter, Angela guided Lucy back toward the grand staircase. She considered exploring more of the house, the library, the second-floor corridor, perhaps even the attics, but after such a roller coaster of a day, she decided rest was the better choice. They retreated upstairs to the guest suite. From the large window, Angela watched the sun sink lower on the horizon, bathing the estate gardens in gold. She helped Lucy wash up in the antique bathroom attached to the bedroom, letting the faucet run until the water was clear of any rust tinge. Then she changed Lucy into a spare t-shirt from her suitcase. It would serve as pajamas for now, until they could get proper night clothes. Her own clothing situation was similarly sparse. When they settled on the bed, Lucy curled against Angela, the stuffed bunny tucked under her chin. The house felt quieter now, with Spencer gone, but Angela knew Ben was somewhere on the property. And groceries would arrive soon, ensuring they wouldn't go hungry. It was an odd sense of peace, overshadowed by the knowledge of how drastically everything had changed since morning. In a soft voice, Angela told Lucy a short bedtime story, a makeshift tale about a girl in a grand house who discovered hidden rooms filled with treasures. Lucy's eyes sparkled with the fantasy, but soon they grew heavy, lulled by exhaustion and comfort. Within minutes her breaths had deepened, sleep claiming her again. Angela remained awake a while longer, propped against the pillows, stroking Lucy's hair. Her own exhaustion pulled at her consciousness. Once more she whispered a silent thank you to whatever fate had placed Spencer in her path. She felt guilt for her father's cruelty, sadness for the fractured family left behind, but also a flicker of hope that, in time, she might find a new beginning here. Eventually, Angela surrendered to the hush of the estate, letting her eyelids drift shut. The old house settled around them, floorboards creaking occasionally as if sighing with relief at the presence of new life inside its halls. Outside, the breeze rustled through towering pines, and somewhere in the distance a lone owl called into the twilight. For Angela and Lucy, the day had been a whirlwind, of heartbreak, of unexpected salvation, of transitions yet to unfold. But as night enveloped them, Angela clung to one unwavering thought. They were safe, if only for now. The first night at the estate passed in restless fragments for Angela. Though Lucy slept soundly beside her, Angela found herself waking intermittently, listening to every creak and shuffle the old house produced. Marble floors and soaring corridors had a way of magnifying the smallest sounds. A whisper of wind through the pines turned into an eerie sigh against the windows. Occasionally, she thought she heard footsteps in the hall, likely Ben making his rounds. Still, Angela drifted in and out of broken sleep, lulled by the knowledge that Lucy was warm and safe. By the time she finally sank into deeper rest, the gray light of dawn was already creeping through the tall windows. When she opened her eyes again, weak morning sun was spilling across the bed. Lucy was awake, sitting at the edge of the mattress, wearing Angela's oversized t-shirt like a dress. She gazed out the window, transfixed by the sight of rolling mist in the gardens below. The child's hair stuck out in fuzzy curls from sleep, and her stuffed bunny balanced precariously on her lap. "Good morning, my love," Angela said softly, propping herself on one elbow. Lucy turned, bright-eyed. "Morning, Mommy. Everything outside is so white," she exclaimed, pointing at the veil of fog that drifted over the lawns and flower beds. "It looks like a fairy tale." Angela smiled, heartened by Lucy's enthusiasm. She gently pulled the child closer, then brushed a gentle kiss against her forehead. "It does. Maybe we'll go exploring once the fog lifts." They took a moment to stretch and wake fully. Angela moved to the bathroom, letting the ancient pipes rattle as warm water splashed into the sink. She washed her face, wishing she had more than a single small bar of soap and a basic travel toothbrush. "We'll need better toiletries," she noted silently. Maybe the grocery delivery included that. Soon, Lucy was skipping around the bedroom, singing in a half-whisper so as not to disturb the hush of the house. Angela slipped into the only other outfit she had, a simple pair of jeans and a plain blouse. She made a mental note. Clothing would be a priority, especially for Lucy, who had only a few garments in their rushed suitcase. They ventured downstairs, Lucy holding tight to Angela's hand. The mansion felt different in the morning, dust motes shimmering in slanted daylight, the air less ominous now. The hush was still there, but it carried a softer, more welcoming aura. In the foyer, Angela paused, unsure if Ben was around. She didn't see or hear him, so she tried to recall the path to the kitchen that Spencer mentioned. Off to the left, through a short hallway, they found a wide kitchen area, tall cabinets, a large farm-style sink, and an antique stove. The countertops were old but clean enough, and a row of windows offered a view of the sprawling backyard. To Angela's relief, she spotted a few bags and boxes arranged near a wooden table in the center of the kitchen, likely the groceries that had arrived the previous evening. She must have slept through the delivery. Lucy ran over excitedly, peering into the open boxes. "Mommy, we have milk and fruit," she declared, rummaging through the contents. Angela joined her, carefully lifting items out. There were bread, eggs, butter, a small bag of sugar, boxes of cereal, fresh apples and bananas, and a few other staples. Even some toiletries, soap, shampoo, toothpaste. A wave of gratitude flooded Angela. She set the supplies on the table and checked the fridge. It hummed quietly, its interior chilling properly, so she placed perishables inside. "It's not a feast," she murmured, "but it's more than enough for us right now." Lucy latched onto the box of cereal with a small cheer. Angela found a clean bowl and spoon, and soon the child was perched at the table, munching happily on brightly colored loops. Meanwhile, Angela poured herself a glass of milk, sipping slowly as she contemplated a plan for the day. Maybe she could do a quick cleaning spree, at least in the kitchen and the main living area. She'd also like to step outside, breathe in the fresh morning air, see the garden. But her bigger questions weighed heavily. How long could they stay without imposing? What about finding a job so she wouldn't rely solely on Spencer's generosity? And where did she even start? Being in an unfamiliar county where she knew no one except the caretaker and a man she'd met barely a day ago. Lucy finished her cereal and hopped off the chair, bounding around the kitchen like a squirrel. Angela tidied up, rinsing the dish in the old sink. She was drying her hands when the kitchen door swung open. Ben stepped in wearing boots dusted with mud, a baseball cap shading his weathered face. "Morning, Miss Angela. I see you found your supplies," he noted with a polite smile. "Thanks to you or whoever arranged them," Angela replied. "It's perfect, just what we needed." He nodded. "Mr. Spencer told me to ensure you had what was necessary. He also mentioned you might want a small tour of the place, inside and out. I can show you around if you'd like." Angela hesitated. "Lucy would love to see the garden, but I don't want to keep you from your work." Ben scratched at his cheek. "Showing you around is my work today. Besides, the old greenhouse and orchard out back could use some eyes on them. You might have fun exploring with your daughter, if that suits you." Lucy, overhearing, gasped. "Greenhouse? Like with flowers?" Ben smiled. "Flowers, vines, maybe some tomatoes that sprout up every year on their own. It's a bit wild back there." Angela gently smoothed Lucy's hair. "We'd love to see it. Just let us put our shoes on." Within minutes, they were outside, stepping onto a flagstone path behind the mansion. The morning fog had mostly lifted, revealing a sprawling backyard edged by towering trees. Low stone walls half buried in moss wound through patches of overgrown shrubs. A neglected gazebo rose in the distance, its once white paint peeling. Angela caught glimpses of what must have been immaculate rose beds in some distant era, now filled with tangles of wildflowers. "Used to be quite a show garden," Ben said, noting Angela's expression. "Magnolias, hydrangeas, all sorts. We still keep the main pathways clear, but the rest grows free. Spencer said he wasn't sure what he wanted done yet." They ambled along a path strewn with fallen leaves, Lucy hopping to avoid puddles. Eventually, they reached a worn glass structure that jutted up like a relic, its iron beams rusted, its panes streaked with grime. Some panels were cracked or missing, leaving vines free to crawl in and out. Ben unlatched the door to the greenhouse, which creaked open with protest. Inside, the air was humid and smelled of damp earth. Amid the clutter of broken pots, Angela spotted clusters of green shoots pushing up from soil-filled troughs. Lucy squealed happily. "Look, Mommy! Baby plants!" she cried, rushing over to peer at them. Angela followed, smiling at her daughter's fascination. "Do you know what they are?" she asked Ben. He squinted. I'm no horticulturist, but looks like some volunteer tomato plants, maybe stray herbs. A few years back, an old gardener used to tend them. He retired, and nobody's touched it since. Angela rested a hand on the wooden frame of a planter box, imagining how this greenhouse must have flourished under proper care. "Lucy and I could try to water these if that's all right," she offered impulsively, "just to keep them alive." Ben's weathered face broke into a warm grin. "Sure, I'll get you a watering can. The spigot still works outside, though the water's sometimes slow. If you want to revive the greenhouse, be my guest. Might do it good to see some love again." Angela smoothed Lucy's hair, heart lifting at the idea of a small project. Caring for these plants could provide a sense of purpose, a routine, even if she was still uncertain about how long they'd stay. Lucy, too, looked positively thrilled at the notion of growing something. They wandered out of the greenhouse, continuing along the path. At the edge of the property, past a row of towering hedges, Ben pointed to a small cottage. Smoke curled lazily from its chimney. "That's my place," he explained. "I keep a wood stove going on cooler nights. If you ever need me and I'm not in the mansion, you'll likely find me there." Lucy waved excitedly at the cottage, though no one else seemed to be around. Angela felt reassured knowing that help was nearby. "Thank you for showing us," she said. "This estate is huge. I'd get lost if you hadn't guided us." Ben nodded, then paused, glancing toward a cluster of tall willow trees that masked a distant corner of the grounds. "There's a bit more property that way. An orchard, mostly apple and pear trees, though they've gone wild. It's a nice spot for a picnic if you don't mind the overgrowth." Lucy tugged Angela's sleeve, eyes shining. "Can we see the apples, Mommy?" "Maybe another time," Angela said, noticing the sun was already climbing higher. She realized Lucy hadn't had a proper breakfast beyond cereal. "Let's head back for now. We'll come again soon." Ben accepted that with a genial shrug. "I'll walk you up." They retraced their steps toward the mansion. Along the way, Lucy chattered about the greenhouse, the orchard, the possibility of tomatoes and flowers. Angela listened, smiling at her daughter's excitement. She felt a spark of optimism. Each hour that passed made this place feel a bit less intimidating. When they reached the back door, Ben excused himself to return some tools to his workshop. Angela and Lucy entered the kitchen, where sunlight angled across the newly stocked shelves. A subtle hush enveloped them, as though the mansion awaited their next move. Angela decided to fix a late breakfast. Scrambled eggs, maybe toast. She rummaged through the groceries, finding a carton of eggs and a loaf of bread. Lucy pulled a chair to the counter, determined to help crack eggs into a bowl. Despite a bit of shell falling in, they managed a passable mixture. Angela heated a frying pan on the old stove, carefully minding the dial's uncertain settings. The eggs sizzled, sending up a comforting aroma that filled the kitchen. Lucy bounced on her toes, holding the spatula once Angela judged the temperature safe enough. The morning's exploration, combined with their stomachs rumbling, made the simple meal feel like a small celebration. Angela served the food on a pair of plates, setting them at the kitchen table. The two of them ate together, Lucy chatting about the plants they'd seen, asking if they could name them. Angela laughed softly, deciding a tomato plant might be called Tommy or Lola. Yet beneath the laughter, Angela's mind churned. She was grateful for the calm, but she knew challenges lay ahead. She had to contact someone about job prospects, figure out finances, maybe even gather the courage to see if a local school for Lucy was feasible. And there was still the question of her father. Would he simply vanish from their lives, or would his anger resurface in some way? When breakfast wrapped up, Lucy raced around the kitchen, chasing a sunbeam that filtered through the window. Angela took the dishes to the sink and began washing. A memory flickered in her mind, of those bleak minutes on her father's porch, feeling Lucy tremble against her, and the roar of his voice ordering them out. Now here they were, in a sprawling estate, cooking scrambled eggs in a dusty but functional kitchen. It was impossible not to reflect on how life could pivot in a single day, from utter despair to guarded hope. Angela inhaled, letting the warmth of the morning and Lucy's bright giggles anchor her. Yes, she told herself, they had a long road ahead, but for now, just for this moment, she would let them savor the sweetness of a new beginning. Midday found Angela and Lucy seated on the front porch steps of the estate, enjoying a light breeze that wafted across the property. Lucy nibbled on an apple from the newly stocked kitchen, while Angela cradled a mug of tea, one of the few additions she'd found among the groceries. The sunlight cast dappled patterns through the tall pines near the front gate, and the neglected fountain in the circle drive added a certain romantic melancholy to the view. They had been there quietly for several minutes when Lucy broke the silence. "Mommy," she said between bites, "when can we talk to Mr. Spencer again?" Her voice held an innocence that tugged at Angela's heart. It was hard to believe their entire world had turned upside down less than a day ago, all because of a single moment of kindness from a stranger. Angela sipped her tea thoughtfully. She had Spencer's phone number tucked safely in her pocket, but she hesitated to call him, worried she might be interrupting his business or imposing. "We'll talk to him soon, honey," she answered, smiling at Lucy. "He said he'd call, or we can reach out if we need anything." Lucy seemed satisfied, returning her attention to the apple. Meanwhile, Angela's mind drifted. She wanted to thank Spencer properly for everything he'd done, but she also felt uneasy, unsure how to handle such a debt of gratitude. Guilt nibbled at her. She didn't want to be a burden. At the same time, she recognized there was no simple fix for her sudden homelessness, and he'd offered sanctuary precisely so she could breathe and plan. She was mulling over these thoughts when the estate's iron gate rumbled open. A car Angela didn't recognize. An older sedan, gray paint scuffed on the bumper, rolled up the driveway. Lucy perked up, hopping to her feet. Angela stood too, heart thudding. It wasn't Spencer's sleek black sedan, so who could this be? The car parked in front of the porch, engine sputtering a bit before cutting off. The driver's door opened, and a woman in her early 30s stepped out. She was of medium height, with cropped brown hair and a practical windbreaker over her jeans. She surveyed the house with open curiosity, then lifted a hand in greeting. Angela clutched Lucy's hand, tension rising before the stranger called out in a gentle voice, "Hello, I'm Maggie. I work for Spencer. He asked me to bring some additional supplies, especially for the little one." She motioned to the trunk of her car. "May I come up?" Relief flooded Angela's chest. She offered a friendly nod. "Of course, I'm Angela, and this is my daughter Lucy." Maggie smiled warmly at Lucy, then popped the trunk. She pulled out a couple of large shopping bags plus a sealed box. "I do a bit of personal assistant work for Spencer," she explained, walking up the porch steps. "He called me this morning, said there was a young family needing extra clothes and such." Angela's cheeks warmed with gratitude. That was kind of him, and of you. "Thank you." They all moved inside to the foyer, where Maggie set the bags down. Lucy peered curiously at them, but Angela kept her daughter close by until she was certain about Maggie's presence. The woman seemed at ease, taking in the grand architecture of the estate with mild awe. "It's been ages since I've visited," she murmured. "Always forget how massive this place is." Angela nodded. "We're still exploring ourselves. It's a lot to take in." Maggie shot her a kind look. "I can imagine. Anyway, I've got some child-size clothing, a few extra shoes in different sizes, some pajamas." Spencer wasn't sure of Lucy's exact fit, so he guessed. "There's also more toiletries, some craft supplies for the little one, and a few non-perishable food items." Lucy glanced at Angela for permission. With a nod, Lucy knelt down to peek in the bags, excitement spreading across her face. Angela joined her, carefully sorting through the items. There were small t-shirts with playful designs, comfy leggings, even a pair of pink sneakers that looked about Lucy's size. Angela's throat tightened. She and Lucy had only the bare essentials when they arrived. Seeing a fresh stack of necessities felt like a lifeline. Lucy lifted a new coloring book from one bag, her eyes shining. "Mommy, look, princesses and ponies!" she exclaimed. Maggie crouched beside Lucy, smiling. "I tried to pick something fun. There are crayons in there, too." Angela stood, pressing a hand over her heart. "I don't know how to thank you. I haven't even seen Spencer since yesterday. This is all so generous." Maggie waved off the concern. "It's no trouble, really. Spencer has the resources and he wanted to make sure you both are settled. He's not someone who does things halfway." Angela felt a swirl of emotion, relief, gratitude, and a faint unease at the thought of receiving so much help without any real way to reciprocate yet. But Lucy's delight eased some of that tension. If her daughter was happy and secure, then accepting help from a caring source might be the right path, even if it felt like stepping into a new world where strangers became benefactors. Maggie cleared her throat. "He also mentioned you might be looking for a job. I handle a lot of administrative tasks for him, so if you want, we can talk about your experience. Maybe we can find something that suits your skills." Angela's pulse quickened. She hadn't expected that conversation to come so soon, but she was glad. "That would be wonderful. I've done waitressing, housekeeping, even some sewing, though it's mostly self-taught." She paused. "I'm a quick learner." Maggie nodded, pulling out her phone and making a note. "There's an events center Spencer's involved with, plus some local business offices. Let me ask around. Maybe see if the housekeeping staff at the events center can use an extra hand, or if any of his offices need an assistant. He's usually willing to provide on-the-job training if he sees potential." Angela exhaled, a sense of hope blossoming. "Yes, please. Any lead would help me start saving money so Lucy and so we can figure out a stable future." They settled the bags in the corner of the foyer, Lucy still flipping excitedly through the coloring book. Angela walked Maggie back outside while Lucy stayed within sight, happily sprawled on the floor with crayons and paper. The warm sun touched Angela's face and she shielded her eyes, turning to Maggie. "Thank you so much. For the clothes, everything," Angela said again. "And if Spencer calls or if there's some way I can reach you to follow up about job openings..." Maggie handed over a simple business card. "Here's my cell number and email. Spencer's too busy sometimes to answer every call. I'm often his go-between. Reach out anytime, okay?" Angela accepted the card with a grateful smile. "I will, and please tell him I said, thank you truly." Maggie offered a kind grin. "I will, but you can also just call or text him. He's not a scary mogul. He actually cares a lot." She paused, noticing Angela's hesitant expression. "Don't worry, he's used to people thinking it's odd to help strangers, but it's who he is." Angela pressed her lips together. "I appreciate it. I do. It's just new to me, that's all. Kindness on this scale, I mean." Maggie's eyes gleamed with understanding. "Then let's hope it becomes your new normal. Take care, Angela." With that, Maggie climbed into her sedan, turning the key until the engine coughed to life. Angela watched her drive off, disappearing down the gravel lane past the iron gates. The hush descended again, but this time it felt different. A hush tinged with anticipation and possibilities rather than isolation. Angela ventured back inside. Lucy was on her belly, coloring a cheerful rainbow across the blank page. "Look, Mommy!" she exclaimed, holding up her artwork. The childlike scribbles made Angela's heart swell. If Lucy was able to maintain such carefree joy, maybe this estate could become more than just a temporary refuge. It could be a place for Lucy to truly blossom. She helped Lucy sort through the new clothes, folding them neatly. The small pink sneakers fit Lucy perfectly. Angela promised they'd test them out in the garden later. For now, though, Angela felt compelled to restore at least a bit of normalcy. There were rooms still shrouded in dust sheets, floors that needed sweeping. She might not have a paying job yet, but she could contribute here by tidying the spaces they used. Gathering a few cleaning supplies she'd spotted under the kitchen sink, Angela led Lucy into the main parlor. where Ben had removed dust covers the previous day. The furniture was still in slight disarray and the windows bore smudges from years of neglect. Lucy's eyes sparkled mischievously at the idea of helping clean. Angela handed her a feathered duster and the child diligently swiped at low surfaces while Angela tackled the taller ones. The air soon filled with swirling motes of dust, drifting in the sunlight. They opened windows to let fresh air flood in, stirring the stale scent of old upholstery. As they worked, Lucy chatted about the greenhouse, asking when they'd water the little tomato plants again. Angela promised a mid-afternoon excursion. In the process of dusting a side table, Angela discovered a stack of faded books about gardening, likely left behind by a previous occupant. She set them aside, thinking they might come in handy if she actually tried to nurse the greenhouse back to life. By the time midday sun was high overhead, they'd made real progress. The parlor looked more welcoming, chairs and sofas positioned neatly, surfaces wiped clean, windows open to reveal sweeping views of the front lawn. Lucy declared it their living room, as though naming it helped dispel any ghostly echo of emptiness. Feeling accomplished, Angela suggested a break. She prepared a simple lunch in the kitchen, sandwiches on fresh bread with apple slices on the side. Lucy was thrilled. They sat at the same modest kitchen table, mother and daughter, enjoying the gentle quiet of the estate. Outside, birds trilled, and a soft breeze carried in the promise of a mild afternoon. After lunch, they ventured back to the greenhouse, watering the spindly volunteer plants. Lucy giggled every time water dripped through the cracks in the old troughs, splashing her feet. Angela helped support a few leggy stems with makeshift stakes. It wasn't much, but at least the plants wouldn't wither for lack of attention. A hush fell over them as they worked, both absorbed in the small, comforting task of nurturing life. Rays of sunlight filtered through the greenhouse's dirty glass panels, illuminating flecks of dust and pollen. For a while it was just the sound of trickling water and Lucy's soft humming. Eventually they made their way back inside, rinsing dirt off their hands in the kitchen sink. The rest of the day stretched before them, a quiet lull without errands or urgent deadlines. Angela felt an unusual sense of calm, which she hadn't experienced in years. Growing up, her father had always found chores or criticisms to occupy her time. As a single mom, she'd constantly juggled Lucy's needs with a low-wage job's demands, barely scraping by. Now, at least momentarily, there was spaciousness. She resolved to use it wisely, to find a stable job, gather savings, and plan a future for Lucy. She'd already given Maggie her background information, so maybe something would pan out soon. In the meantime, she could help care for the estate. If Spencer welcomed that arrangement, she might carve out a meaningful role here, at least until she was truly back on her feet. That evening, as dusk crept over the mansion, Angela tucked Lucy into the large bed in the guest suite. Moonlight cast pale rectangles on the floor through the unshuttered windows. Lucy clutched her stuffed bunny, eyelids drooping after the day's playful exertions. Angela kissed her daughter's forehead. "Good night, sweet pea," she whispered. Lucy mumbled something about tomatoes and pink sneakers, then drifted off. Angela lingered by the window for a long while, staring at the darkened driveway, half expecting Spencer's car to roll in. But all remained silent except for the soft buzz of cicadas in the summer air. She traced the memory of Maggie's visit, the generosity that continued to flow from Spencer's quiet but determined interventions. She wondered what his life was like beyond these walls, beyond the estate. Had he once hoped to make this mansion his home? If so, what stopped him? A swirl of thoughts pulled at Angela. She remembered her father's anger, the sting of his rejection. And she remembered the unspoken regrets clouding Spencer's gaze when he spoke of someone he once knew. We all carry burdens, she reflected. Maybe in helping each other, we finally find peace. Eventually, Angela turned away from the window, preparing for bed. Tomorrow, she decided, she'd be brave enough to call Spencer or Maggie. She wanted to extend her thanks herself and perhaps schedule a meeting to discuss job prospects. She wanted Spencer to see that his kindness mattered, not just in providing shelter, but in offering a chance at a whole new life. Curling beneath the quilt, she listened to Lucy's slow, rhythmic breathing. The mansion was full of quiet mysteries, and the future remained uncertain. Yet the hope that had kindled yesterday kept burning, warmed by every new display of generosity and each small triumph of the day. Angela woke the next morning to gray drizzle spattering the window panes. The gentle rain brought a serene hush to the estate. The grounds looked misty and subdued in the early light. Normally, such dreary weather might have dampened her spirits, but here, safely inside these old walls, she felt oddly comforted by the soft rhythm of raindrops. Lucy dozed on, her hair a tangle against the pillow. Angela quietly dressed, choosing one of the new outfits that Maggie had delivered for her, a soft gray sweater and simple black pants. They fit surprisingly well, and she felt a surge of confidence slipping out of her usual worn jeans and t-shirt. Today, she'd make that phone call to Spencer's assistant, Maggie, about job opportunities. Downstairs in the kitchen, Angela flicked on a small overhead light and set a kettle to boil. The patter of rain against the windows provided a gentle backdrop. She rummaged through the cupboards, pleased to find they were still well stocked. Cereal for Lucy, bread for toast, fresh eggs. The estate might feel like an echoing labyrinth, but at least there was enough food and warmth. As she waited for the water to heat, Angela pulled out the business card Maggie had given her. She ran her thumb over the printed name and number, nerves fluttering. "It's just a call," she reminded herself. They offered to help. Still, she inhaled deeply before dialing the number on her cell phone. Maggie answered on the second ring, sounding bright despite the early hour. "Morning, Angela. How are you and Lucy?" Angela smiled at Maggie's friendly tone. "We're doing well, thanks. Just settling in. It's raining today, so we're staying indoors. I was wondering if we could talk more about that job search you mentioned?" "Absolutely," Maggie said without hesitation. "Spencer and I spoke about it yesterday. We have a couple of leads. One possibility is a housekeeping position at an event center he partially owns, Suncrest Pavilion. They often host weddings, conferences, that sort of thing. Another lead is an office assistant role with a small consultancy firm that works with Spencer's businesses. We can explore both and see which fits your schedule best." Relief coursed through Angela. "That's fantastic. I'd be grateful for any opportunity." "Then let's do this. I'll set you up with a short phone interview for each position. If they like you, we can move on to a face-to-face meeting. How does that sound?" Angela nodded vigorously, even though Maggie couldn't see her. "Yes, that sounds perfect. I'm free any time." "Great. I'll give them your number and they'll likely reach out soon," Maggie explained. "Oh, and Spencer mentioned you might need childcare for Lucy if you take a job. Is that a concern?" Angela exhaled, realizing childcare was indeed a looming worry. "Yes, it is. Lucy's only 5, so she'd normally be starting kindergarten in the fall, but I'm not sure about the local school district or whether I can enroll her mid-year." "I'll get you some info on local options," Maggie replied. "Spencer knows a few teachers in the area. There might be a preschool kindergarten program that can still admit new students. Or maybe a part-time nanny until you figure out the best plan." Angela's chest tightened at the idea of Lucy staying with a nanny or going to a new school. But she pushed aside the anxiety, reminding herself that life had changed drastically, and Lucy's education would be part of building a stable future. "Thank you," she managed. "Truly thank you. I never expected so much support." "That's what we're here for," Maggie assured her. "I'll be in touch soon." They said their goodbyes, and Angela ended the call, feeling a rush of cautious optimism. She glanced at the kettle, realizing it had been whistling softly. Hastily, she poured hot water into a mug and dipped in a tea bag. A wave of steam rose, carrying a soothing aroma. Soon, Lucy padded into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes. "Mommy, it's raining," she said, yawning. "We can't go play in the garden, can we?" Angela scooped her into a warm hug. "We can go later if it clears. How about we do some indoor exploring today, or maybe art projects with those crayons and coloring books?" She gave Lucy a playful tickle. The child giggled, brightening at once. After a quick breakfast of toast and eggs, mother and daughter ventured through the mansion's hallways. With the windows streaked by rain, the dim corridors felt cozier. Lucy pointed out ancient portraits hung on the walls, solemn ancestors who once graced these rooms. The estate's hush seemed less intimidating today, more like a calm retreat from the world outside. They soon reached a set of double doors Angela had bypassed in previous explorations. One door was slightly ajar. Inside was a library, a large room with floor-to-ceiling shelves crammed with old books. Dust coated the surfaces, but the space had a grand, scholarly aura. An ornate desk occupied the center, draped in a cloth to protect it from the elements. Lucy gasped, eyes wide. "Look at all the books, Mommy!" Angela felt her own pulse quicken at the sight of so many pages waiting to be discovered. She'd never seen a private home with a library this extensive. "Let's see if there's anything we can actually read," she murmured, gently lifting the cloth from the desk. A small cloud of dust rose, making Lucy sneeze. They moved carefully among the shelves, reading spines. Many titles were classics or historical tomes, Shakespeare, Dickens, or history books from decades past. But in one corner, Angela found a section of children's literature, though much of it appeared antique. Some titles she recognized, like Little Women and The Secret Garden. Others were unfamiliar, with yellowed pages and worn covers. Lucy clutched a battered storybook filled with old-fashioned illustrations of fairies. "Can we read this one, Mommy?" she pleaded. Angela brushed off the dust with her sleeve, then smiled at Lucy. "Of course. Let's find somewhere to sit." They settled into a large armchair near the window, though the old drapes made it too dark for good reading. Angela tugged them aside, revealing a gray sky but allowing more light to spill in. Lucy curled into her lap as Angela opened the storybook. The illustrations were whimsical, with curly vines and softly drawn fairy wings. She began reading, her voice hushed in the echoing space. The story was a gentle fable about a lost fairy who found her way home with the help of a kind woodcutter. Lucy listened, enraptured, occasionally pointing out details in the pictures. Outside, the rain continued to patter, creating an almost musical backdrop. After finishing the tale, Lucy begged for another. Angela obliged, smiling at the child's eagerness. In a life full of hardships, these moments of peace and mother-daughter closeness felt precious. Once the second story ended, Lucy hopped off Angela's lap to explore more books. Angela carefully replaced the fairy book on a less dusty spot, mentally promising she'd wipe down some shelves later so Lucy could safely browse. They spent at least an hour in the library, discovering hidden corners and old reading lamps. Lucy turned each exploration into a mini-adventure, pretending they were searching for a magic book that granted wishes. Angela's heart warmed at how quickly Lucy embraced the mansion's mysteries. Eventually, the need for lunch drew them back to the kitchen. Angela threw together a simple soup using canned broth and vegetables. Lucy insisted on helping chop a carrot with a dull knife. Angela guided her hands. As they cooked, the skies remained overcast, the soft drizzle unwavering. While the soup simmered, Angela thought about calling Spencer himself, just to say hello, to tell him how grateful they were, and to confirm how well Lucy was adapting. Yet she hesitated, remembering Maggie's words. "He's not a scary mogul. He actually cares a lot." Maybe it was her own insecurities that held her back. "But he did say I could call any time," she reminded herself. Deciding to be brave, she retrieved Spencer's number and dialed. Each ring made her pulse jump. Finally, a click, and his quiet voice. "Hello, Spencer here?" Angela took a breath, mustering composure. "Hi, Spencer, it's Angela." She paused. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." There was a faint sound of papers shuffling on his end, like he was in the middle of work. "Angela." "No, not at all." "Everything all right at the estate?" A small smile formed on her face. "Everything's fine. The rain has kept us indoors, but Lucy's happy. We, found the library this morning." She heard a hint of warmth in Spencer's chuckle. "That library was one of the reasons I bought the place. I'm glad you discovered it. So you're settling in okay?" "More than okay," she admitted. "Maggie dropped off clothes and supplies, and she's already helping me with job leads. I wanted to say thank you. Again." There was a pause, and in that pause Angela sensed the unspoken complexities behind Spencer's generosity. "You're welcome," he said finally. "I'm just relieved you and Lucy have what you need. Maggie told me you're exploring the housekeeping or office assistant positions." She nodded, then realized he couldn't see her. "Yes, I'm excited. I'll wait for the interviews." "That's good," Spencer said. "I think you'll do great. You strike me as someone who doesn't shy away from hard work." Her heart fluttered. "I appreciate your confidence. Truly." Spencer cleared his throat, as if shifting to a more business-like tone. "I might visit the estate tomorrow or the next day. I have some free hours between meetings. I'd like to check on a few property details and see how you two are doing in person." Angela felt a surge of both excitement and nerves. "We'd love to see you, Lucy especially. She keeps talking about Mr. Spencer who saved us." A soft exhale came through the line, something that could have been a laugh or a sigh. "I didn't do much," he said quietly. "Just the right thing at the right moment." Another brief silence, then, "Let's plan on tomorrow afternoon, if the rain eases. I'll text you when I'm on my way." Angela agreed, warmth spreading through her. After a few more pleasantries, they ended the call. She cradled the phone in her hand, heart thumping. Spencer's presence hovered in her mind. A calm, somewhat guarded man, but undeniably kind. She thought of the regret she'd sensed beneath his polished exterior. Everyone carries some past hurt, she mused. He's choosing to heal it by helping us. "Mommy, the soup!" Lucy's voice jolted Angela from her reverie. She rushed back to the stove, rescuing the soup before it could scorch. They shared lunch together at the kitchen table, the drizzle outside forming little streams down the windows. The soup was modest but warming, a reminder of how quickly life had pivoted from desperation to solace. Lucy prattled on about their library finds, already planning to return for more fairy stories. After lunch, they cleaned up and spent part of the afternoon tidying a few more corners of the mansion, Lucy delighting in the swirl of the feather duster again. Angela hummed softly, imagining how she might greet Spencer tomorrow, how to convey her gratitude in person once more. Yet she also wanted to respect his boundaries. She suspected he didn't like attention on his benevolence. Eventually, Lucy curled up on the freshly dusted parlor sofa with her coloring book, while Angela brewed another cup of tea. She settled across from Lucy, letting her thoughts drift. Tomorrow, Spencer would come, and they'd show him how well they'd cared for the estate in his absence. She wanted him to see the garden eventually, maybe see how Lucy watered the greenhouse plants. It felt right to prove that they weren't just idle guests. They were invested in this place too. Evening crept in softly, with the rain tapering to a light patter. Angela prepared a simple dinner, pasta with sauce from a jar. Lucy ate heartily, then insisted on washing dishes with minimal help, proudly standing on a step stool to scrub. Angela tidied around her, smiling at Lucy's determination. Before bed, Angela read Lucy another story from the antique children's books they'd found in the library. Tonight's tale was about a brave little horse who traveled through a magical forest. Lucy was enraptured, eyes shining in the lamplight. Outside, the estate's hush enveloped them, broken only by the occasional croak of a frog or the hiss of the wind in the pines. "Mommy, I like it here," Lucy mumbled drowsily once the story ended. "It feels like a storybook house, and you're not sad anymore." Angela stroked Lucy's cheek. "I'm happy you like it, sweetheart. Let's keep working to make it feel like home." Lucy soon fell asleep, lulled by the mansion's comforting quiet. Angela lingered by the bed, her heart a mix of warmth and resolve. Tomorrow Spencer would see them thriving here. She'd do her best to show him that his faith wasn't misplaced. She had one foot in a new life. She just needed to step forward without fear. As she prepared for sleep, Angela replayed her phone call with Spencer in her mind. There'd been no awkwardness, only a simple sincerity. Could it be that with each day she might learn more about this enigmatic stranger who'd rescued her, and perhaps heal some part of him in return? The thought glimmered in the darkness like a faint promise. She closed her eyes, letting that soft hope guide her into restful dreams. The morning of Spencer's planned visit dawned crisp and clear, the sky scrubbed clean by the previous day's rain. Angela woke to sunlight spilling across the guest suite's bed, dancing on Lucy's curls. Outside, the estate grounds sparkled, puddles reflecting patches of blue sky, leaves still dripping from the storm. Lucy was already half awake, pushing aside the quilt. "Is Mr. Spencer coming today?" she asked, voice husky with sleep. Angela smoothed the child's hair, heart lightening at her excitement. "Yes, he said he'd come by this afternoon, but first we have a whole morning to fill." Lucy bounded from the bed, rummaging through her new clothes until she found a pink sweater and leggings. Angela chose a flowy blouse and a pair of comfortable slacks, determined to look put together but still practical for a day of potential chores. After breakfast, simple toast and fruit, they decided to tidy the entryway and the parlor again so everything felt welcoming. Lucy eagerly wiped smudges from a window with a cloth, while Angela swept the foyer's marble floors. Between tasks, Lucy would dash to the front porch, checking if Spencer's car had arrived. "Not yet, Mommy," Lucy called, poking her head through the door. "But it's almost lunchtime. Do you think he'll bring food?" Angela laughed softly. "I don't know, but we have enough to prepare a meal if he'd like to eat with us." She glanced at the clock near the stairs. It was nearly 11. Plenty of time to plan something simple, maybe a fresh salad and sandwiches or a light pasta dish. They finished cleaning around noon, and Angela guided Lucy to the kitchen. "Let's see what we can whip up," she said, opening the fridge. There was lettuce, a handful of vegetables, some leftover soup. She decided a hearty salad, plus grilled cheese sandwiches would be easy to prepare at the last minute if Spencer was indeed hungry. Lucy helped wash lettuce at the sink, giggling every time droplets splashed up. Angela was just about to slice a tomato when she heard the low purr of an engine outside. Immediately, Lucy froze, eyes shining. "He's here," she whispered, barely containing a squeal. Angela's heart fluttered. She wiped her hands on a towel and looked at Lucy. "Shall we go greet him?" They hurried to the front porch. Spencer's familiar sleek sedan was just rolling to a stop in the circular driveway. He stepped out, adjusting the cuff of his dress shirt, though notably, he wore a more casual blazer today, less formal than before. His gaze lifted toward the porch, and upon seeing Angela and Lucy, a small smile curved on his face. Lucy bounded down the porch steps. "Mr. Spencer!" she called, waving. Spencer's smile deepened. He gave Lucy a gentle wave in return, waiting for her to close the distance. Angela trailed after her daughter, swallowing a flutter of nerves. This was the first time she'd seen Spencer since the day he dropped them off. A swirl of gratitude and uncertainty rippled through her. Lucy reached him first, beaming up at him. "We have a greenhouse," she announced as though it were the most important thing in the world. Mommy and I watered the tomatoes and they're not dead." Spencer let out a soft chuckle, crouching to Lucy's level. "That's wonderful," he said. "I'm glad you're taking care of them. They deserve some attention after all these years." Angela stepped closer, offering a warm smile. "Welcome back," she greeted. "Thank you for everything again." Spencer straightened, meeting her gaze briefly before glancing around the estate. "I'm just happy to see you two settling in," he replied quietly. "The place looks livelier." She nodded, noticing the subtle difference in his demeanor, a bit more relaxed than during their first encounters. "We did some cleaning in the parlor. Still plenty of dusty corners, though," she joked lightly. Spencer's eyes sparkled with amusement. "It's a never-ending battle in a place this size, but I appreciate it." He gestured to the mansion. "Mind if we go inside? I'd like to see how you've settled." Lucy grabbed his hand, pulling him eagerly toward the front door. Angela's stomach flipped at the child's easy affection for him. But Spencer seemed comfortable, letting Lucy guide him up the porch steps. Inside, the foyer gleamed with the faint smell of lemon cleaner. Lucy chattered about the library, about the fairy book they found. Spencer listened intently, nodding as she relayed every detail. Meanwhile, Angela observed the interplay between them, feeling a quiet warmth blossom. There was a gentleness in Spencer's gaze she hadn't noticed before. "So," he asked Angela as they reached the parlor, "how's it truly been? Any issues with the house? Plumbing, electricity, that sort of thing?" Angela shook her head. "Ben's been great checking in. And the water, power, everything's worked fine. We've just been exploring, tidying, cooking our own meals. It's been surprisingly peaceful." Spencer studied her for a moment, then nodded as though satisfied. Lucy tugged on his sleeve, insisting they see the greenhouse. Spencer suggested they take a quick look around the interior first, so Lucy led them up to the guest suite she and Angela occupied. She proudly displayed the tidy room, the curtains Angela had washed, and the plush bed with new linens Maggie had delivered. Angela felt self-conscious showing him the space, but Spencer's approval was gentle. "It's a relief to see the estate being put to good use," he said softly. "It's too large to remain empty, gathering dust." Lucy bounced on her toes. "Now, can we go to the greenhouse?" Spencer chuckled. "Sure, lead the way." They headed downstairs, then out through the back door. The yard glistened under the sun's renewed brightness, the grass still damp and dotted with tiny puddles. Lucy practically skipped along the stone path. Angela lingered behind a step or two, falling into stride with Spencer. "Thank you for arranging Maggie's help with job prospects," she said quietly. "She mentioned Suncrest Pavilion and a possible office assistant role. I'm up for either." Spencer's expression shifted to a hint of businesslike focus. "Yes, we talked about that. I think you'll have interviews soon. You can choose whichever job suits your schedule with Lucy." He gave her a sidelong glance. "Maggie also mentioned the possibility of a nanny or looking into a local school." Angela nodded. "I am thinking about Lucy's schooling. She's turning 6 in a few months, so she's kindergarten age. But I'm worried about transferring her mid-year. For now, I'm just weighing options." Spencer offered a small, reassuring nod. "Take your time. I'll cover costs if that's an obstacle." His straightforward generosity squeezed Angela's heart. "You don't have to," she began, but he raised a hand, stopping her gently. "I know, but I want to. Let's see how the interviews go first, and we'll sort out details, step by step." They reached the greenhouse, where Lucy proudly showed off the little tomato sprouts they'd rescued from drought. Spencer praised her efforts, kneeling to examine the plants. "Impressive, Lucy. They look healthier already." Lucy beamed, then scampered off to inspect a broken pot where a tiny green shoot poked through the soil. Angela stood by Spencer's side, hugging her arms around herself, inhaling the warm, earthy smell that pervaded the greenhouse. "Life always finds a way," Spencer murmured, touching a leaf, "even when things seem abandoned." Angela's gaze flicked to him, catching the wistful note in his voice. She recalled the day he found her on her father's porch, how his own regret seemed to drive him. Perhaps this greenhouse symbolized something similar, a neglected place now returning to life. They strolled back toward the house, Lucy running ahead with the energy of a child who felt secure enough to roam freely. Angela and Spencer followed at a slower pace. "Would you like some lunch?" Angela asked, nerves fluttering again. "I was going to make grilled cheese and salad. It's nothing fancy." Spencer smiled. "That sounds perfect." Once inside the kitchen, Lucy perched at the table with her crayons while Angela fired up the stove. Spencer stood nearby, leaning against the counter. His presence felt comfortable yet still carried an undercurrent of formality. He was, after all, a man who owned this estate and had business matters that demanded his attention. Angela assembled the sandwiches with cheese and a bit of tomato, buttering the bread so it would crisp nicely. Spencer offered to help, but she nudged him toward a seat instead. "You've done so much," she insisted. "Let me do the cooking." He acquiesced, observing quietly as Angela flipped the sandwiches. Lucy hopped down from her seat to set out plates and cups, determined to help. After a few minutes, they had a modest meal arranged on the table, grilled cheese sandwiches and a leafy green salad with a light dressing. They ate in companionable silence at first, the only sound being Lucy's contented chewing and occasional chatter about her coloring. Spencer sampled the sandwich, nodding appreciatively. "This is really good," he remarked, earning a pleased smile from Angela. "I figured we can't go wrong with grilled cheese," she teased lightly, though her cheeks warmed. "Thank you for the groceries and for everything else." Spencer acknowledged her thanks with a dip of his head, then sipped from the water glass Angela had set out. "So, is there anything else you need? Anything the estate's missing that I haven't provided?" Angela paused, considering. "We're okay on food and basics. Lucy's clothes fit nicely. Maybe just more cleaning supplies. I'd like to dust and wipe more rooms, if you don't mind." "By all means," he encouraged. "Feel free to turn the place upside down if it helps you and Lucy feel at home." Angela's heart fluttered at the phrase, "feel at home." "We do, at least as much as we can without overstaying our welcome." Spencer's brow knitted. "You're not overstaying. I meant it when I said I want you here until you're ready for the next step, whether that's weeks or months. This estate is massive and lonely. I'm glad to see it used." Lucy, done with her sandwich, tugged on Spencer's sleeve. "Mr. Spencer, do you live somewhere else? Why don't you stay here?" Her innocent question made Angela stiffen slightly. She didn't want Lucy prying into Spencer's personal affairs. But Spencer didn't seem offended. He regarded Lucy with a gentle smile. "I have another house closer to the city for work. This place is special, but I can't be here full-time right now. Maybe someday." Lucy nodded, as though that made perfect sense. Then she ran off to fetch her crayons, returning to draw a picture of the greenhouse. Meanwhile, Spencer and Angela finished their meal, a comfortable hush settling over them. "Would you like to see the parlor and the library again?" Angela asked, standing to clear the plates. "We spruced them up quite a bit." Spencer agreed, helping her stack dishes in the sink. Lucy followed, brandishing her new drawing of tomatoes and a watering can. Together they wandered to the parlor, where warm afternoon sunlight slanted through freshly cleaned windows. The old Victorian furniture gleamed, dust-free. Angela even found a small vase and placed a few wildflowers on the mantel. Spencer looked around, clearly pleased. "It's remarkable what you've done in just a few days," Lucy piped up proudly. "Mommy's a super cleaner." Angela laughed softly. "It helps to have an eager assistant." They moved next to the library, where Lucy promptly showed Spencer the fairy book. He carefully flipped through its fragile pages, impressed by the antique illustrations. Angela explained how they'd been reading old stories each evening, and Spencer's expression grew thoughtful. "I always envisioned someone using this library. he said quietly. Books shouldn't gather dust. Angela sensed unspoken meaning behind those words, a parallel to the house itself, perhaps. She set a hand lightly on Lucy's shoulder. Thank you for letting us be the ones to read them. Spencer nodded, then glanced at his watch, a hint of reluctance in his posture. I should head back soon. I have an evening meeting. Disappointment flickered in Lucy's eyes. Already? Spencer bent down to her level. I promise I'll visit again, and we can check on those tomatoes together. Deal? Lucy nodded, brightening a bit. Deal! Angela walked him to the foyer. We'd love to have you stay longer sometime, she ventured, hopeful yet aware of his busy schedule. Or join us for dinner? I might not be a gourmet chef, but Lucy approves of my cooking at least. A ghost of a smile touched Spencer's lips. That sounds nice. Let me clear a date in my calendar. Maybe next week? Angela felt her cheeks flush with a pleasant warmth. Whenever works for you. They stepped onto the porch. The sun had fully emerged now, illuminating the stone steps. Spencer paused at the top of the stairs, turning back toward Angela. She swallowed, searching for the right words. Thank you, again, for everything. I know you've heard me say it many times, but I really mean it. His gaze rested on her for a moment, calm and sincere. You're most welcome. Then, more quietly, you and Lucy have brought life to this place. I'm grateful for that too. Something unspoken passed between them, a gentle understanding that their lives had intersected at a point of need and unexpected generosity. Lucy, oblivious to the subtleties, bounded forward to say goodbye again. Spencer ruffled her hair, then made his way to the car. Angela and Lucy watched him drive away, silent until the sleek sedan vanished beyond the estate's gates. A breeze rustled through the nearby pines, and a sense of both hope and uncertainty swirled in Angela's chest. She had a feeling that their story here was only beginning, that each new day would reveal more about the mansion, about Spencer, and about the possibility of rebuilding a life that had once seemed shattered beyond repair. The days following Spencer's visit flowed with a calm, steady rhythm. Angela and Lucy settled into a comforting routine at the estate. Mornings spent tidying and caring for the neglected greenhouse plants, afternoons exploring dusty corridors or reading in the library, evenings winding down with simple meals and storybooks. In between these domestic rhythms, Angela received phone calls from the two potential employers Maggie had mentioned. Her phone interviews went smoothly. Her polite demeanor and willingness to learn left a good impression. An in-person interview was scheduled at the Events Center, Suncrest Pavilion, for the following week, where they needed a part-time housekeeper to help with weddings and special gatherings. The second interview, for the office assistant role, would occur shortly after. She felt both excitement and nerves. If she secured one of these jobs, it would be a critical step toward independence. She might be able to find a small apartment for Lucy and herself eventually, though the idea of leaving the estate already tugged at her heart. Oddly enough, this once intimidating mansion now felt like a shelter she wasn't quite ready to abandon. Lucy, meanwhile, thrived in the estate's leisurely freedom. She woke each day with eager curiosity, racing down the hall to check if the tomatoes in the greenhouse had sprouted new leaves, or if a fresh layer of dust had settled on the library shelves. Sometimes Ben the caretaker joined in their greenhouse watering sessions, bringing along small gardening tips. The child's laughter echoed through once empty rooms, and each new day Lucy seemed more confident, more assured that life could be bright and magical. Angela found herself pausing in quiet moments, reflecting on how drastically their world had changed since the day her father had cast them out. She still felt the sting of rejection, especially at night when lonely memories crept in. But in the daylight, she focused on the warmth surrounding them, Spencer's unwavering help, Maggie's supportive guidance, Ben's practical kindness, and Lucy's boundless joy. Late one morning, Angela was in the parlor polishing an antique side table when she heard Lucy running from the foyer. The child burst into the room, breathless and clutching the stuffed bunny. "Mommy, Mr. Spencer is here. His car is outside." Angela's heart skipped. She set down the polish rag, wiping her hands nervously on her slacks. "Already?" He didn't call first. A surge of anticipation spread through her. He must have decided to drop by again. Together they hurried to the front door just as Spencer climbed the porch steps. He wore a relaxed button-down shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms, and carried a slim folder under one arm. Angela noticed that he seemed more at ease than before, as though each visit to the estate peeled back layers of formality. Lucy bounded forward, greeting him with excitement. "Hi, Mr. Spencer. Are you here to see my plants?" Spencer chuckled, nodding. "I certainly want to check on them, but I also have something to discuss with your mom, if that's okay." Angela met his gaze, curiosity piqued. "Of course. Come in." They stepped into the parlor and Angela gestured for Spencer to sit on the recently polished sofa. Lucy plopped onto the rug, hugging her bunny as if waiting for story time. Angela perched on the edge of an armchair, trying not to fidget. Spencer set the folder on the coffee table. "I didn't mean to arrive without warning," he began, his voice calm. "But something came up, an opportunity that might interest you." Angela exchanged a quick glance with Lucy, who blinked back with bright curiosity. "An opportunity?" Angela echoed. Spencer opened the folder. Inside were a few documents and brochures. He pulled out a colorful flyer first, a bright, inviting graphic advertising a summer learning program for children, complete with photos of kids doing arts and crafts, nature walks, and basic academic lessons. "It's a private kindergarten/day camp that runs year-round," he explained. "They accept rolling admissions. Maggie and I thought Lucy might like it if you plan to work soon. They combine play-based learning with structured activities. It's only a few miles from the event center where you might get hired." Lucy's eyes lit up at the pictures. "They have a pet rabbit, Mommy! Look!" she exclaimed, pointing to one of the photos. Angela's breath caught. "That's amazing. I've been worrying about who would watch Lucy if I started working." She paused, turning to Spencer. "But isn't a program like this expensive?" Spencer gave a mild shrug. "They offer scholarships, and I'm more than willing to cover whatever isn't covered. Consider it an investment in Lucy's future, if you like the idea, that is." Emotions swelled in Angela's chest, gratitude, relief, and a hint of discomfort at relying on him yet again. "It looks wonderful," she whispered, touching the brochure. "Lucy, would you like to go to a place like this where you can learn and play with other kids?" Lucy nodded vigorously, her bunny bouncing against her chin. "Yes, they have painting and everything." Angela forced herself to meet Spencer's eyes. "We'd be so grateful. Are you sure it's not too much?" She hated to voice her insecurity, but she also wanted to respect boundaries. He smiled softly. "Not at all. It helps both of us. I want you to be able to work without worrying about Lucy's care. And she deserves a chance to learn alongside other kids, don't you think?" Angela's throat tightened. "Yes, thank you," she said, voice trembling slightly. She closed her eyes briefly, summoning composure. "Thank you so much." Spencer nodded, then pulled out another set of papers, these detailing Lucy's admission forms and the basic schedule. He explained that Maggie had already contacted the director, so if Angela agreed, Lucy could start as soon as the following Monday. Angela's heart fluttered at how quickly life was moving, yet she recognized it as a necessary next step. Once the practicalities were discussed, Lucy took Spencer's hand and insisted he see the new growth on the tomato plants. Angela trailed behind, heart still in overdrive from the conversation. They walked the damp path to the greenhouse, and Lucy chattered happily about how she'd water the plants before and after her new school program. Inside, they discovered bright green shoots, some even sprouting tiny buds. Spencer genuinely admired Lucy's dedication, praising each small leaf. Angela watched them from a short distance, thinking how surreal it was that her child had grown so attached to a man they barely knew a week ago. Yet Spencer had been their saving grace, in more ways than she could count. Eventually, they returned to the house. Lucy ran off to fetch her crayons, declaring she'd draw a picture of her new school. Spencer and Angela found themselves alone in the foyer, the late morning sun casting golden rectangles on the marble floor. Angela clasped her hands, willing her voice to stay steady. "Spencer, I can't express how much this means. You're doing more than just providing shelter. You're giving Lucy a real chance." His eyes flickered with empathy. "I just don't want you to struggle the way you have. You deserve better." A fragile warmth bloomed in Angela's chest. She recalled the sadness she'd glimpsed in Spencer's own gaze, the regret that might be driving him. Part of her ached to ask about it, but she felt it wasn't her place yet. "This estate," she said instead. "Why did you buy it if you never planned to live here?" Spencer hesitated, hands slipping into his pockets. "At first I thought I might renovate it as a family retreat. Then circumstances changed. I didn't have the family I expected." His voice was quiet, weighed down by some private memory. "So it's just stayed empty, waiting." Angela's breath caught. "I'm sorry," she said gently, unsure if she should press for details. He brushed it off with a small shake of his head. "Let's just say it feels right having you and Lucy here now. Like part of the house's purpose is being fulfilled, caring for people who need it. Maybe that's how it was always meant to be." She couldn't quite find words, so she simply nodded, offering a soft, empathetic gaze. Spencer cleared his throat, a faint awkwardness creeping in. "Anyway, I'll check with Maggie to confirm Lucy's enrollment, and we'll finalize the job interviews as well. I can drive you if you need a ride." Angela's heart glowed at the offer, but she quickly shook her head. "I can manage transportation. Maggie mentioned there's a public bus route. If I time it correctly, Lucy and I can get around." Spencer studied her, maybe sensing her determination to stand on her own 2 feet. "All right," he agreed, "but the offer stands if you ever need assistance." She thanked him, and soon Lucy reappeared, brandishing her new drawing of a school building with big windows. They admired it together, praising Lucy's artistic flair. Then, much to Lucy's dismay, Spencer announced he had a meeting in the early afternoon and needed to leave shortly. She extracted a promise from him to visit again soon, especially when the tomatoes started producing fruit. "I'm not sure they'll bear fruit anytime soon," Spencer teased gently, "but I'll be back." He ruffled Lucy's hair, then gave Angela a respectful nod. "Call me or Maggie if anything comes up." Angela walked him out to the porch, Lucy trailing behind. She met his gaze once more. "Thank you, Spencer," she said, voice soft. "I'll never stop saying it." He held her gaze for a moment, emotions flitting behind his eyes. "Take care," he murmured. With that, he strode down the steps, climbed into his sedan, and pulled away. Lucy watched, hugging her bunny until the car vanished through the gates. Angela gently rested a hand on her daughter's shoulder. In the hush that followed, the weight of their changed circumstances settled on Angela again, this time lightened by a sense of real progress. Lucy's future was shaping up. Angela's job prospects seemed within reach. And Spencer? He loomed on the edges of her thoughts, his kindness carving a deeper place in her heart. They headed back inside, Lucy's footsteps echoing in the foyer. Angela stared at the enrollment papers for Lucy's new program, the official lines and boxes waiting to be filled with information about her child. She ran her fingertips over the lines, tears threatening to form at the corners of her eyes. Not from sadness, but from a sudden surge of overwhelming gratitude and hope. "We're going to be okay," she told herself. Lucy tugged at her sleeve. "Mommy, can we color again? I want to draw Spencer a thank you picture." Angela knelt down, hugging Lucy tight. "That's a wonderful idea," she whispered. "Let's do that." A week passed in a flurry of practicalities and small triumphs for Angela and Lucy. Each day, a routine took firmer shape. By sunrise, Angela was up, bustling around the kitchen to make breakfast, oatmeal with sliced apples or sometimes scrambled eggs. Lucy emerged soon after, rubbing her eyes, brightening the moment she remembered she had a new school to look forward to. Even the dusty corridors of the estate seemed to glow under the swell of renewed purpose. Mornings often involved Lucy's excited chatter about the upcoming program. She couldn't wait to meet other children, see the classroom pets, and try the art projects. Angela called Maggie to finalize the admission forms, verifying Lucy's age and emergency contacts. Together, they arranged a quick visit to meet the program director, who welcomed Lucy wholeheartedly. The building was cheerful, full of bright posters and low tables where kids painted, built block towers, and quietly practiced early reading skills. Watching Lucy's eyes widen with anticipation, Angela felt relief wash through her. It was a vivid sign of the fresh start they were forging. In tandem, Angela prepared for her job interviews. Her first appointment was at Suncrest Pavilion, a graceful venue perched near a lake known for picturesque weddings and events. Nervous butterflies filled her as she boarded a local bus. The route took her through scenic back roads and finally dropped her at a tidy walkway leading to the pavilion's entrance. Inside, she was greeted by a manager who seemed harried with back-to-back events. But he softened at Angela's polite demeanor, her willingness to work evenings and weekends if needed. When he learned she was raising a child alone, he nodded sympathetically, promising to keep her in mind. They spoke about cleaning protocols, table settings, the intangible skill of staying calm amid chaotic wedding parties. Angela admitted she'd never done housekeeping in a high-end venue before, but she had the stamina and the open mind to learn. The manager asked her to wait for a final decision in a few days. The second interview was at a small consultancy office in the nearby town center, a quieter environment focusing on administrative support. Maggie had set up this interview, stressing that Angela was organized, reliable, and eager to grow. The office manager was a crisp, professional woman who quizzed Angela on typing speed, basic computer knowledge, and the ability to handle phone calls politely. Though Angela had no formal office experience, she highlighted her adaptability. When asked what motivated her most, she spoke plainly: to provide a stable life for her daughter. By the end of the talk, the manager appeared impressed by her honesty and composure. Between interviews, Angela juggled Lucy's enrollment details. The learning program offered half-day sessions to ease new children into group activities. Lucy's first day was fast approaching, just 2 more mornings, and Angela would walk her inside to meet the other kids. The child could barely contain her excitement, squealing whenever she practiced writing her name on the brand-new backpack Maggie had purchased. Spencer stayed in touch, though his schedule remained hectic. He called one evening to ask how the interviews went, his voice carrying an undercurrent of genuine curiosity. Angela summarized both prospects, still uncertain which one she preferred. The office job was steadier, but housekeeping might have more flexible shifts for Lucy's schedule. Spencer assured her that either way he'd do everything possible to help. His unwavering support warmed Angela, yet sometimes she wondered if she relied on him too much. She tried to remind herself he had been the one to insist on helping. He never showed any sign of regret for stepping into their lives. Ben, the caretaker, popped by more frequently. He seemed pleased to see Lucy bouncing around with news of her new school, or to find Angela cleaning a different corner of the mansion each day. He mentioned an old orchard on the eastern edge of the grounds where the trees occasionally produced fruit even in their neglected state. Lucy grew determined to see if any pears or apples still clung to the branches. By midweek, Angela allowed a short trip there, trudging through tall grass and brambles until they reached a ring of gnarled trees. Indeed, they found a handful of small, pale apples hidden among the leaves, tart but edible. Lucy's delighted giggles echoed through the orchard, as she plucked them with Angela's help. That night, Angela baked an apple crisp in the mansion's outdated oven, filling the kitchen with a sweet aroma. She and Lucy savored it, sharing slices with Ben, who declared it was the best dessert he'd eaten all year. In that moment, Angela felt a stirring sense of belonging, a caretaker who felt like an old friend, an estate that had become their safe harbor, and the hum of possibilities just outside these gates. The following day, Spencer arrived unannounced once again, this time in a rush, wearing a sleek business suit. Angela met him in the foyer, surprised at his tense posture. "Is something wrong?" she asked, heart skittering. His face softened the moment he saw her concern. "No, not exactly. I've just had a stressful meeting in town," he exhaled. "But I didn't want to leave without checking on Lucy's school preparations. Are things going smoothly?" She nodded, explaining Lucy was upstairs, carefully folding her new school clothes. A flicker of relief crossed Spencer's features, though a hint of strain lingered in his eyes. He murmured an apology for his mood, mentioning how a business partner had nearly pulled out of a major project that morning. Angela offered him a seat, asking if he wanted tea or a snack, anything to help him decompress. He hesitated, then admitted a small break sounded nice. They settled in the parlor. Lucy soon rushed down, exclaiming about her upcoming first day at the program, waving pictures she'd drawn of the orchard apples. Spencer set aside his business persona for a moment, giving Lucy his full attention. When Lucy asked if he'd ever come see her at school, Spencer gently said, "That might be tricky with my schedule, but I'll be cheering you on, okay?" Angela found herself studying Spencer's demeanor, the tension in his brow, the fleeting sadness behind his eyes. She recalled how he mentioned once having different plans for this estate, imagining a family's laughter filling the halls. Something had derailed that dream. Now, paradoxically, Angela and Lucy were providing the life he'd once wanted here. The thought filled her with a curious blend of gratitude and sorrow for him. After Lucy bounded off again, Spencer's gaze lingered on Angela. "Thank you for taking such good care of this place," he said quietly. "I know you've got interviews and Lucy's schooling. If you ever feel overwhelmed, please remember you can rely on me." She smiled warmly. "I do know, and I'm so thankful. But I'm also determined to stand on my own. I don't want to just be a guest, you know? I want to earn what we have." A flicker of understanding passed between them. He nodded, accepting that as part of her nature, and they spoke no more about it. That evening, while Lucy snoozed in her newly arranged bed, Angela couldn't stop thinking about how everything felt both fragile and full of promise. She missed her mother's calming presence, especially as Lucy's first day of the learning program approached. Her mother would have shared Angela's excitement and pride, but she pushed aside the pang of loss, focusing on the path forward. The next morning arrived. Lucy dressed eagerly, carefully smoothing the new outfit Maggie had chosen. Angela helped brush Lucy's hair into 2 neat pigtails. After a quick breakfast, they headed out. Angela had arranged a taxi to drop them at the program building. Lucy clutched her bunny in one hand, her small backpack in the other, face alight with anticipation. At the door, staff welcomed her cheerfully, guiding them into a bright classroom full of cheerful posters and pint-sized tables. Lucy cast one last grin at Angela before a kind teacher whisked her away to meet other children. Angela's heart squeezed watching her daughter vanish into that swirl of color and chatter. For a moment she lingered by the door, recalling Lucy's anxious face on the day they were forced from her father's house and contrasting it with the glow of excitement now. The transformation was profound. Resisting the urge to tear up, Angela left the building, determined to trust Lucy's resilience. She stepped outside, the morning sun already warming the pavement. Her phone buzzed, Maggie calling to confirm the final interview with the office manager for the next day. Angela answered with steady confidence, setting the time. Then she realized she had a few free hours before picking Lucy up at noon. Perhaps she could do a quick grocery run for fresh produce, maybe a treat to celebrate Lucy's first day. Making her way to a local market, Angela felt every step laced with a new sense of purpose. Gone was the shameful memory of standing on her father's curb, Lucy in her arms. Now, each decision moved them forward. She pictured the mansion as it was this morning. Sunlit windows, the library books no longer cloaked in dust, the greenhouse plants thriving under Lucy's care. And Spencer, somewhere out there, juggling business challenges while continuing to watch over them from a distance. His generosity might have been the spark, but Angela was fanning that spark into a flame of self-sufficiency. In the market, she browsed leisurely for tomatoes, onions, and a small carton of cookies Lucy liked. At the checkout, she glanced at the modest sum of money Spencer had insisted she keep for emergencies. A flush of gratitude washed over her. Yes, she was using his help now, but it was fueling her path to an independent future. She vowed to pay it forward someday, to be a harbor for someone else in dire need. By noon, Angela returned to pick up Lucy, who came bounding into her arms with squeals of delight. The teachers praised Lucy's friendliness. She'd already made 2 new buddies, they said. Angela's heart nearly burst at the joy in her daughter's face. That evening, back at the estate, Lucy regaled Ben with stories of the new friends and the crafts she made. Angela quietly tidied up the kitchen, overhearing Lucy's excited chatter. She smiled to herself, reflecting on how life had shifted from chaos to calm in a mere span of weeks. Later, as Lucy dozed, Angela stood by the window in their guest suite, peering at the moonlit grounds. She let her mind drift to the day's small victories: Lucy's successful first day, the encouraging interviews, the orchard apples that might soon turn into another batch of crisp, and Spencer's steady presence, ready to help but respecting her desire to stand on her own. A sense of fragile peace and promise wrapped around her heart. Even if uncertainties lay ahead, like whether she'd secure the job, how Lucy would adapt over time, or if her father would ever reconsider his harsh rejection. Tonight, Angela allowed herself to believe in the power of hope. The mansion seemed to breathe quietly under the moonlit sky, no longer a silent relic but a place pulsing with new life. She whispered a good night to the darkness, her voice barely above a breath. "We're going to make it." And in the hush of that grand estate, it felt true. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen.